Are we on? We're on.
We're on, we're almost done being live.
Just give me the thumbs up when you're ready. Welcome to the August 8th Camden Select Board meeting. Official call to order. Tonight's meeting is broadcast live on Spectrum TV cable channel 1303 and on YouTube. Also, we are on Zoom, and if you'd like to comment via Zoom, please, or ask a question via Zoom, please do so. Audra will monitor Zoom for us. Let us know, please, if someone asks a question via Zoom. Our first agenda item for tonight is public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on a non-agenda item? Seeing none, we move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the approval of board minutes for July 11th, 2023 meeting. Discussion board.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0, motion carries. The third item on our agenda tonight is the public information meeting to present alternatives for the new pedestrian bridge and receive input from the public before the town begins the design process. We have a representative from HEB here tonight. Please come forward. And if you could just state your name for the record.
Yes, thank you for having us. My name is Chris Fournier with HEB Engineers. We have been engaged by the town to start the process of replacing the Robson Avenue vehicular bridge with a new pedestrian bridge. So that's what we're here tonight. We've just recently really started our work. And as stated, we're here to present alternatives. So we've evaluated several options that the town has for that location, and we'll offer some recommended paths forward, budget options as well as aesthetic options, and not looking for a decision tonight, but really looking to receive public input on the work we've completed so far. That way it guides our path forward towards the eventual replacement of this bridge. I will say the project is funded partially by Maine DOT. So the project has a budget of $500,000, $500,000, with 50% coming from Maine DOT and 50% share for the town. Above that $500,000, the cost, the remainder of the project would be 100% on the town. So let's just keep that in mind as we move forward with the presentation. A little bit just about HEB's background, just a couple pedestrian bridge examples, the depth of our experience, but a couple of bridges in the western portion of the state that were completed for the United States Forest Service, as well as the cross-country bridge out in Kingfield, Maine. These were just examples of similar pedestrian bridges, as well as a little more signature bridges up in Bolton that we did quite a few years ago, as well as over in New Hampshire, Hartford Patient Care, and this Cuba State bridge. But to get into your bridge, so just running through what I've already talked about, but that's our general agenda. As well as the location of the bridge, hopefully I'm mostly aware, but just up Washington Street, we come to Boston Ave, and that's where the bridge currently is closed at this point in time. So a little bit about the bridge. This is a photo from underneath the bridge, kind of demonstrating the poor condition and the results of the bridge. That bridge is closed at this point in time. It's just a 32-foot long concrete slab bridge built in 1935, so it's seen its time, closed in 2019. And then Maine DOT, as a separate project to the pedestrian bridge installation, is going to come in and remove the existing vehicular bridge, and that will be sort of the end of their ownership and leadership on the bridge projects. The project to install the pedestrian bridge is entirely municipally managed, so it is the town's project moving forward. And the planned replacement is with a pedestrian bridge. As far as the removal project, just trying to comment on that a little bit. This is the latest sort of main DOT plan, and it simply does show as the Mississippi River flows down in our page. This is the bridge location. This is the tannery site. It shows Maine DOT proposing to remove the bridge and then install riprap protection along the banks where the abutments used to be, and the center pier of the bridge removed. So, eliminating that restriction on the channel at this location. And that is how, obviously the bridge is still there today. So Maine DOT is going to come in and do this project, and then the pedestrian bridge project will come in after that.
Can I just ask a quick question about that? Will those ripraps be as high as the existing bridge? Because in the last flood episode we had, the water came up to very close to the top of the bridge abutment. So it'd be a concern if, the bridge now is acting as a dam, or as a block basically, for the corner there. The river takes a corner, and if it doesn't have something, it's just going to swoop right over our property for sure.
Yeah, we're not involved in the Maine DOT design or permitting of the riprap there. I would assume removal of the pier should help the hydraulics in this location and help reduce that flood elevation. But I do believe that they do show the riprap nearly at the top of the slope. So just from what's depicted here,
If you could pause for a second. It's a good question, but what we're going to do is we're going to allow Chris to finish his presentation.
Okay.
And then if you do have questions, I'm going to have you come up to the
Okay.
microphone. and speak. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. So here's just a real basic depiction of what a pedestrian bridge would look like from plan view at the location. Maine DOT riprap installed, and really it is obviously just a narrower version of the bridge. The intent is that the bridge will be much longer than the existing vehicular bridge. That way we're not imposing on the hydraulics of the river as it was, restored by Maine DOT. So the intent is we're just kind of flying over the top of how Maine DOT leaves itself. So the bridge is significantly longer. At this point, I'm running through sort of the options of this pedestrian bridge, and at the end, we'll kind of combine sort of a good combination of those options into proposed alternatives. So we've kind of called a few of those alternatives together for you. But this is an orientation of the bridge in line with the roadway as it's used today for pedestrian traffic. Alternatively, the bridge could be oriented if any proposed development was planned for the tannery site and could be directly focused in that direction. That is a potential. It does result in a longer bridge and a more expensive bridge, but just laying all the options on the table at this point in time. The next set of options we're going to talk about is sort of the bridge width. What we're seeing in the pedestrian bridge market, and really more so the multimodal bridge market, is that we're accompanying all forms of non-vehicular transportation. So really 8 foot has become the minimum width for these types of bridges, which accommodates 5 foot width for bicycle traffic and then a 3 foot accommodation for pedestrian traffic. More so, we're seeing folks move towards a 10 foot width. Obviously, increased price, increased square footage of the bridge, but that would allow two-way, bicycle traffic across this location. So those are just two options that we're going to go on this. Regarding the superstructure type, this is obviously more of the character of the bridge. There's a wide range of bridge types out there. We showed you a few that we've done. And in talking with, Audra and Dave, we've arrived at some of these, recommended alternatives. The first being, metal truss. This is probably the most, one of the most common, types of vector bridges that we work with. This particular one is an aluminum truss bridge, so it's real low maintenance in that aspect. And just, this is recent one we've completed. And then even more common is this, a weathering steel truss bridge that has, it's steel, so this develops a natural sort of patina on steel. So it is rust, but it is a protective coating of rust on the bridge. So that's quite frequently chosen. And that one there is showing a wood deck, so it's a nice contrast. Another option is a simple, wood deck over a timber beam bridge, real simple for the span, much lower profile. So you can really blend in the environment quite well. And then alternatively, could be a steel girder wood deck bridge as well. These are just some of the options that we went through. Additionally, and lastly, as requested, we've included a covered bridge option, which would be kind of a landmark, more so at that location. But we've done several of these. This one's a little shorter span, but it is an option for this thing. As well as open siding, just have a little more visibility. There's no need for the siding. So alternative one is sort of a combination of a few of those options. So alternative one, we've combined basically alignment in the roadway, an 8-foot width option. The aluminum truss, with composite decking, so real low maintenance. So the intent of this alternative is to try to capture, a durable, low maintenance option for the town to move forward with. Timeline for construction is quick, it's a prefabricated item, so it's something you order and it shows up on site all in one piece, bring it in the spot. So it's pretty quick. There's construction of the abutments ahead of time on site, which are the concrete footings that the superstructure is placed on. The only item with this is because it is prefabricated. Currently, they're high demand. There's quite a long lead time for these types of structures. It's right now, we had talked previously 7 to 8 months. It was on the tail end of COVID. Right now, it's actually down to 5 or 6 months. So it does require some planning to make sure that we have our project complete well in advance of when we would like the construction to occur, so that we can accommodate that. So it does take some time. The probable costs for this alternative that we've put together is just over your budget at $530,000. So alternative two, we found an alternative that is within the budget. So it's the simple steel beam bridge with a wood deck. Again, alignment on the roadway. I should say the alignment on the roadway does allow us to utilize an 80-foot span bridge, whereas the alignment towards the tannery site is a 100-foot span bridge. So there is an increased cost with that extra length for that other location. 8-foot width, again, simple steel beams, wood decking. It is the most economical of the alternatives that we came up with. And this is just low profile. It's not making a statement out there. Timeline for construction is a little bit longer, as some of the components do need to be assembled on site, 6 to 8 weeks. The probable cost for this is $460,000. The last alternative we're presenting today is the covered bridge option, more of the Cadillac option, if you want to say that, just to show you what a more landmark alternative could be, oriented toward the tannery. So we're actually showing you the top end of what you could choose. Tannery site, a wider bridge to accommodate more width. Covered bridge. The intent of this is aesthetics. The construction duration is longer. This is much more assembly required, and probable cost is well beyond the $500,000 budget this project has. But the intent is really just demonstrate the full range of options that the town does have. So just to summarize real quick, in general, that's what the alternatives that we're looking at are. And regarding the project timeline, so we got going this spring. We intend to submit a preliminary design report, so we have several submissions that need to be made to Maine DOT for them to approve along the way. The first is a preliminary design report, which following this meeting at separate time, a decision will be made on which alternative or adjustments to those alternatives the town would like to proceed with. That will be finalized in that preliminary design report for approval of Maine DOT, and then we'll move on with the design process, culminating in bidding for contractors to move forward with construction in fall of next year. And then moving towards construction after, hopefully immediately after the DOT removes the bridge in the spring of 2025, and then it goes out soon thereafter.
Thank you, Chris. Questions from the board? Sophie?
So, Chris, thank you so much for, Chris, right?
Yes.
Sorry, thank you for, I'm sorry, I just came up from another committee, so it's taking me a few minutes to kind of find my grounding here. Could you go back and show us with the different designs and the price tags? Because I think it would be useful if we could have the visual and the price tag at the same time.
Okay.
Because my understanding is you're pricing only 3 options, but you've showed us more.
Sure. So, I think there can be, sort of choice paralysis, I
Right.
guess, if you,
Or,
offer too many. So we attempted to cull down the many options you have into 3 sort of guideline alternatives, the economical one, sort of the low maintenance one, and then the nice, aesthetic one.
I understand that, but I'm personally confused between the different aluminum options, and I'm hoping I'm not the only one who's confused. If I am, it's fine.
So a bridge like this was what we proposed as alternate 1. And this had the price tag of just over the budget at $530,000. So that's an aluminum truss bridge. That what you see there, that's a 100-foot span. So yours at 80 feet would be a little shorter than that. 8-foot clear width. So allowing a bicycle and a pedestrian to cross each other with room. And then the surface of that would be basically composite decking. So again, aiming for the low maintenance aspect of this. So that's the one that's just over the 530,000. We did not offer weathering and steel truss bridge as an alternative.
Okay.
We can have that discussion and add it in. This truss is, if we substituted out the aluminum and put in this weathering steel truss, it would add, another 10% to that cost. If you were to paint either, you can paint and coat the aluminum truss or paint and coat a steel truss. Again, that adds another sort of $50,000 on the price tag. So I didn't want to, we were sweeping just over the budget. I didn't want to propose something that was pushing it too far. So just acknowledging the low maintenance aspect of that alternative. Moving forward to the beam bridge, so we did not offer the timber beam bridge with wood deck as an alternative. We did offer the steel beam. Minor aesthetic difference, a user of the bridge will not know the difference between these two. It's only someone that's looking at the bridge in profile that would see the wood beams and appreciate the difference maybe between wood beams and steel beams supporting this bridge. So we did propose the lesser expensive of the 2 options, which would be this, wood deck or steel beam bridge. So this one came in at the $460,000. And that's based on our understanding of the current market and availability of contractors for this type of work. And then,
please. Thank you.
yes.
Board, any other questions? Allison?
So are we significantly higher than it is now, or will it be, I guess, I thought I would ask that, will, kayaking underneath it and that sort of thing, is that taken into consideration at all?
Sure, I think, it's a good question. The truss bridges have less structure beneath your feet, structure depth beneath your feet, if that makes sense. So let's just quickly look at the steel beam option. So this is quite deep, there's probably a couple feet between the walking surface, which we would aim to put at the road elevation, not really trying to change the elevation. And then this would stick down 2 feet, which is less than what's out there today. Yeah, no, I mean, better
Oh,
for kayakers than what's out there today. If you go back to the truss options, the distance from walking surface to bottom of structure is less. Because we're really utilizing that full height of that structure to carry the load, so there's less underfoot. So that would provide you more headroom for water sports.
and theoretically, a little less likely that things would get stuck in there. I mean, the pier obviously to the net makes a big difference, but
Yes. Yeah,
What is there for consideration for plowing? Is this bridge going to be a bridge that be plowed throughout the year for people to walk?
there'll be snow removal through there.
And do all the bridges equally allow for that with what we have for equipment?
This is a good question for Chris, but I believe that it'll be more of a question of width for snow removal purposes and how we do that. As opposed to, whether it's a truss or.
Like a sidewalk.
yeah,
Eight feet gives us plenty of room to do the sidewalk.
yeah, I was gonna say based on the municipality, sometimes it's a snowboard in the back of a pickup truck that's even have to utilize for bridges like this, and sometimes it's a sidewalk plow, but they would all structurally be capable of supporting that.
And the town intends to, your intent is to plow that and keep it.
Well, this is used by children across the going to school to this. It will be part of a sidewalk, right?
So Chris, pull your microphone up, and David, if we're gonna get you involved, I'd like you to come up. If
So
there's
I'm
any-
just gonna actually repeat what Dave said, because it's used year round by children and other citizens. He would maintain that with these sidewalk route. And I'm not sure, what do you call that machine?
Sidewalk machine.
Sidewalk machines, gosh, he would use that to maintain.
Do we have any questions from the public? Come on up, please. Yeah, Tom, yes, and please introduce yourself.
Tom Resick, 67 Ross, and I'm a direct abutter to the bridge. Now, the embankment on the borders of Riverwalk is falling down. Is that in your budget, or is that something the DOT is gonna take care of? When they're taking down the bridge? And also, I'm curious about, in addition to that, longevity of these different options and maintenance of the different options.
Sure. So the question about the embankment, you're talking about the
Well, the
timber retaining wall?
The timber retaining wall that's falling down.
Yeah, so it is, so Maine DOT has no intention of touching the timber retaining wall.
Okay.
Yeah, their intent is to stick within the right of way that's there. And simply stabilize what's disturbed by the bridge excavation.
So is the budget, your budget that you're referring to, taking that into account?
So I would say the on alignment, the ones that are aligned with the roadway do not, because the project does not disturb the timber retaining wall. Right. The option, alternative that, swings the bridge out towards the center site, we have included that addressing the timber retaining wall in that budget, yes.
So.
Yeah, Tom, you're gonna have to start speaking in the microphone, please.
So obviously, in considering the budget, the township, the select board should also consider what the cost is going to be to repair that retaining wall, because that is falling down. You're gonna have huge problems when that actually collapses. So in considering the budget, I would add what that's gonna cost to fix that. If putting a bridge in it isn't going to deal with that. Because I think you'd agree that's in very bad shape.
Yeah, outside of the scope of the project that, that is developing right at the minute, it's.
Allison,
So I agree wholeheartedly with Tom, and it seems like the DOT is trying to say that, oh, well, we're gonna be able to remove that bridge and do all this without touching the retaining wall. It's hard, I totally agree with you. And it seems like with all entities kind of trying to say, oh, well, that's not gonna be our problem. In the end, it is gonna be a problem when they go to do it. There is a little bit of, a budget in the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant for the design work, that if there were needed, coordination to do design work above and beyond what DOT is willing to finance. There's a little bit in that, but I agree we should kind of try to figure out a plan for that.
The maintenance issue.
So that's, maintenance of the different options, so. The aluminum truss, can be quite long, the longevity of that, you don't have to have those, sorry, Sam, did not have, I don't have the lifespan numbers at my fingertips, but effectively the steel girder option is where I would recommend this. It's the most rehabable, that wood deck is fairly easy to, it won't last long, the wood deck definitely, but it's easy to replace. I think that's the simplicity of this alternative is its simplicity. Something like that and, basically have its lifespan extended by some good significant maintenance over a period of time. Whereas the truss bridges really, don't lend themselves to easy long-term maintenance over the years. A wood deck on a truss bridge can also be easily repaired, but any deterioration of the truss itself over time, not easily repaired. And then the covered bridges are around forever. Basically, when we go and rehabilitate a bridge, we're replacing basically pieces that weren't replaced last time, which is a continual maintenance effort. It has roofing, it has siding, it's made of wood. It will last hundreds of years, but it does bring the maintenance very speculative. So that'll be a little more detailed in the report that you guys received after the fact.
So how long would the composite aluminum combination last without needing, like hardly at all?
You're saying about 120 years.
could you repeat that? It's a mental question.
Yep, so we've talked to can last up to 120 years.
And then, because I know I'm gonna get emails about this, so I just kind of want to touch on it, not a long discussion, but I do want to touch on it. With the bankman being brought up. Do we have any plans if something were to happen to that embankment, if DOT and the bridge is not going to address that? Is that on our radar to quickly pull funds to quickly do something? I mean, if it's in that bad a shape, do we have that on our radar? Yeah, that would be great if you could. I don't think something like that's gonna be a cheap fix, is it?
So when we were talking with DOT about the removal, they were concerned with the same thing. I said, this is like a zipper. I think it is what they referred to, you start unzipping it, it could just keep on expanding beyond the scope of just the bridge itself. And it's my opinion that we're just gonna pay real close attention when they're removing this and watch what happens and document. And if we see that it starts expanding beyond the scope of the bridge, we'll have to sit down and start discussing with them about whose role it's gonna be to take on and the additional work associated with that. But ultimately, I think that the town is gonna have to probably pay something towards that fix. And because I haven't been really involved in the tannery site too much, Jeremy would probably be involved with that because, you know, you have all of the contamination and all the other things that are associated
Yeah.
potentially with the site itself and that location. And, you know, I don't know what the testing is shown like, directly in that location, but those are all things that could, you know, get a little bit beyond the scope of what we anticipate. I don't think there's any intentional plan to go beyond, you know, with the DOT, just the removal and staying within the footprint of the current bridge, and that's what they're trying to do. So it's just a matter of paying attention to what's happening. And if we start seeing that it's growing in size, when we start pulling this problem down to town, and I'll give you updates on that and let you know what's happening, and we'll have to adjust on the fly, because it isn't something we can totally plan for.
And all of that is, that part of the tannery is under VRAP. So if anything happened to it, DEP would immediately be brought in as well, the brownfields program. And it would become much bigger than what just the town of Camden could handle pretty quickly. That's just the
Right.
reality of that site and a project like this, and what would happen if, you know, that wall needs to be altered in any way.
Is there any way that we could have DEP come out and just look at it? Because this sounds like it's going to happen, so I feel like we need to have some sort of.
I personally don't think it needs to happen as part of this bridge project. It might have to happen as a separate art project associated with the tannery, but I don't think it's gonna have to necessarily be associated unless we change alignment of the bridge. If we change alignment of the bridge, then we need to get DEP involved, probably do some sampling, and then there'll be some probing and geo probing we'll probably have to do to know what the sub base is gonna look like, and that will dictate how Chris engineers out the footing and retaining all of that area. That's also something that we would have to work off of your decision, whether you want to go on alignment or off of alignment. And if we're gonna go off of alignment, then we would take a different course and get DEP involved and start looking at those options. And once we find out some of the data, we would know what the costs are. I would think that one, with that kind of work. Well, but it's really, this is the first step. You need to like decide, select what needs to decide in public, what kind of bridge they want, what their appetite is for the costs, and where do they want the direction of the bridge to go. Do they want this to be part of an overall plan to, with the tannery? Do they want to just go straight across and just be simple and easy and not cost much? These are your decisions that the community has to decide on. So once you guys decide that, that'll trigger us into the next steps of what we have to do. So we can let you know what those costs are and what the next steps are. So really the ball's kind of in your guys' court. And then once you kind of give us some direction, we'll look more into those things and come back with what the options are and the costs associated with that. And then we'll go from there. I don't think we can do much more than that. It's kind of an unknown. It's really based on what direction you go.
Dave, could you bring the microphone to Jeremy?
Thanks, Tom. Dave, I just wanted to point out, snow removal would be quite a big difference for you if it was aligned to the tannery site. Than if it was just straight across the road, and very different. Right now, we don't plow the tannery site, correct? I mean, we open it up, I know,
I mean, we would
plus
just,
you have to,
we would just create a trail.
right,
We would just create a trail. I mean, I'm not really worried about
okay,
the trail, going across the bridge at all. I think the bigger decision is what the community wants this to look like, which direction, we could change our maintenance program of how we push snow. We might have to take a trail, we might have to do some extra things, but
yeah.
this is part of the community's decision on what you guys want. There are options here.
Allison?
So sort of in line with what Stephanie was saying, what is the right time for us to say that we would want that to be an area? It's already an area where people go, it's an area where people fish. It's an area where people like to try to access the river. I don't see any scenario where that retaining wall just gets better on its own. It's already kind of a dangerous thing. Doesn't it make sense to deal with it, whether or not we can get DOT to say it's their responsibility, and it probably can't? Would now be the
I'd say
right
it's
time?
only the right time to deal with it as part of this project, if you're changing the alignment. If you're not changing the alignment and you're staying on alignment, it needs to be a whole separate project that we deal with through a different process than this.
And when we were doing the contract negotiations with the engineering selection process, we got stonewalled a little bit with these different options, because we were kind of talking about, changing the alignment. And DOT really was trying to keep us within the roadway. They really didn't want to go expand beyond that. We finally crafted the documents to say that, they're gonna help us up to a certain point, 250,000 to go straight across. And anything above and beyond that, they're saying is all on you. We're pretty clear about that. So just remember that. Anything above $250,000 and $250,000 we put aside for budgetary reasons is gonna be the town's expense above and beyond what we planned and anticipated. So if those are things that you wanna do and things you wanna think about, you need to decide, okay, do you want to change alignment and where the funding source is going to come from? And once you decided on that, then we can adjust what we need to do. So I think really, like Roger said, the alignment is the biggest piece and the costs.
So Dave, you're not concerned that with the removal of everything that's gonna be happening, that there is like a very small chance that that wall is gonna be affected and come down?
If they remove this bridge and they make that come down, they're gonna have to take care of it.
Yeah, because that's 100%, the removal and the stabilization of the bank. That's 100% MDOT, that's not shared between the town and MDOT.
Right,
Okay.
and that's a good thing, because that's the sticky part.
Right.
I mean, we have kind of the glorious part, we're just gonna put the bridge on the top and be done with it. The DOT has to, I'll get into a little bit of what the DOT has to do in the slideshow that I've given Audra to go over tree removal and some different things, bank stabilization, but that's all on that. And if they start doing this and other things unravel, like a zipper, like they said, they're gonna have to take care of those pieces of it until it's stabilized. They can't just do their piece and leave the rest of the riverbank destabilized. It's against the town, they can't do that. Is that correct? Yeah.
Sophie,
What happens to the other side of Rawson Avenue if we realign the bridge with the tannery? So then there's no more access?
Just, it could be many things. It could be just a stop park area where you could walk down, it could be just different things, a turnaround for plowing. But there already has to be, it's not really gonna change much than it is already.
Is the turnaround part of this project?
Yes, yeah, they're actually they're putting it's not making a huge area, but they're making it so that we can turn our vehicles around. Yeah, for plowing purposes.
any other questions from the public? Please come forward.
Thanks, Jen Healy, Camden. Just food for thought. You mentioned that the bridge is 8 foot width. So if you went to 10 feet, that will increase the cost. Hopefully not as much as increasing the length of a bridge. But I guess just thinking that someone mentioned children would be using the bridge for school, or just thinking about the width for a bicycle, you said 5 feet and then 3 feet for your regular Joe person. Just thinking about children walking to school together, two children, an adult with a child, a person walking their dog and the bicyclist. To me, just don't want to go back and say, oh, we should have gone to 10 feet. 8 feet isn't enough. So I've been trying to sit back there figuring out what each feet are. I don't have a good sense of that, but we could have a 6 foot tall person right down here. Anyway. Just food for thought, for whoever goes into this, the people in the neighborhood, to get a sense of 8 feet versus 10, that can make a big difference for the overall enjoyment. I'd love to be around 120 years to walk on this bridge, but I'd like to go with my grandchild or my dog. So I did as well as a bicycle. So just to keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Or people are standing there pushing too. I haven't really thought about that.
So that's a good statement that you made. It's something really good to consider, just so to give you visuals. A parking space is 8, a legal ADA compliant sidewalk is 5. A travel lane generally is on the road is between 10 and 11 on the road, just to give you kind of perspective of how wide things need to be. So generally a wide sidewalk, like on Park Street, one of the new ones, that's a 5-foot sidewalk, that's pretty wide. So, you know, an 8-foot sidewalk is nice, a 10-foot sidewalk is better.
Does anybody know how wide the table is? No.
Between 5 and 6. Okay, any other comments, or questions on the pedestrian bridge?
What is it that people want? They want cheap, it looks industrial, or do they want more of an icon and covered bridge and a destination point? I mean, what do people really want there at Boston Avenue?
I would say that that's something that, and we can take via email, we can take, via the town manager. To talk about the aesthetics. I think we've gotten a good presentation from Chris tonight. We would be welcome to public input on that.
Including alignment too.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
to me, it makes sense if I'm walking to school, I don't have to go straight.
We do have a long agenda tonight that I'm hoping to get through. But this is a great opener, Chris. Thank you for coming. All that aesthetic stuff, we really would love to hear.
So what's the next steps for the select board in terms of our decision point and things like that? Because I think there's momentum now to get this issue resolved.
So you know how Chris brought up the timeline? So this is a good question for you, Chris. As part of your preliminary design report, do you need to have an option sort of narrowed in on at that point so that you're able to progress to final design?
Yes, so a decision will need to be made, not today. So the intent would, we're gonna issue you a draft preliminary design report. It will be absent of a slide. Right, so we're gonna lay out in more detail what we presented today, a little more technical nature, a little more, addressing what we've heard a little bit in here. And then ultimately, we'll regroup, have a decision made, and then we will finish a preliminary design report. That will be a 30% design, and then progress from there.
So yeah, I would say that once we get the draft preliminary design report, you'll have more information. And at that point, hopefully we'll have more public input and we can regroup with Chris, and that's when we can make some decisions about, what the choice is so that we can progress to final design. We can move the project forward.
Was that in the fall? This fall?
The preliminary design report, yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Next tonight is our public hearing for liquor licenses. Item 4A, Schooner Appledore and Eastwind at 18 Public Landing for renewal Class 1 public service license to sell, serve beer, wines, and spirits on board the vessels. Is there anyone here tonight to speak on behalf of the Schooner Appledore in Eastwind? Board, any comments in this application?
Make the motion that we approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion. All those in favor? 5-0. Item 4B, Lucky Betty's at 46 Elm Street for a renewal of a Class A lounge liquor license to serve beer, wine, and spirits on premises. Is there anyone to speak on behalf of Lucky Betty's here tonight?
You're here.
Board and discussion,
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Second.
motion made and seconded, further discussion. All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you, Dava.
Thank you.
Item 5A, a public hearing for the town meeting warrant. Proposal to amend Camden Code of Ordinances, Chapter 290 zoning, Article 8, district regulations. Going through all the numbers, the changes are first to be made to implement the new state mandated housing opportunities law that require towns to increase housing opportunities based on the state statute. These changes will offer opportunities for greater density in every district where single-family dwellings are permitted, and they create options for those who want to develop affordable multifamily housing. Jeremy?
You did great.
Okay.
That's perfect. How about a motion?
I say, yeah, I say we move to pass.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Don. That was perfect.
Okay.
That's exactly what we're trying to do and we have to do. I put a memo together and I think you've read through it probably there, or it's part of it. A couple years ago, the legislature created, and Governor Mills signed into law, Public Law 2021, Chapter 672, which is known as LD 2003, which mandated municipalities provide more opportunity for more housing, and they mandated this. This is like similar to shoreland zoning, which we have to adopt. Town has to adopt. We have to look through our ordinance, and there's three pieces to this. There's density, so dwelling units per lot. There's accessory dwelling units, and then there's affordable housing. The way that the planning board and Shenley and I had kind of determined the best course of action was to, since the board's concerned about short-term rentals, as you know, and accessory dwelling units are a piece of that. We decided to kind of hold off on the accessory dwelling units piece for now. State law required this originally to be implemented statewide in every municipality July 1 of this current year. The legislature did, and Governor Mills approved a new law that extends it out to July 2024. It doesn't give you a lot of time, but the state came up with some rules very late in the process. So what we did was the planning board had 3 workshops and a public hearing on this to handle the affordable housing component, which is again mandated. We created what's called an overlay zone. We have a business opportunity zone, that's an overlay zone. Shoreline zoning is an overlay zone, if you will. So we created an affordable housing overlay zone. We put all the affordable housing pieces into that affordable housing overlay zone section. And then what we did was to address the density piece, that requirement to mandate more dwelling units on a lot that has a single family home. We took the state law and the rules and applied our zoning to it. And that's where you come up, that's where we came up with these new dwelling unit, lot type per dwelling unit, minimum per dwelling unit. What we didn't do was we didn't change the minimum lot size requirements. So if you look in here, the village goes down, I think, 2,500 square feet or 3,300 square feet per dwelling unit. We didn't get rid of the 10,000 minimum lot size. We just said this lot sizes are staying the same because that kind of creates the neighborhood, that creates the character of town. We didn't change the lot coverage, building coverage, or setbacks, or any of those kinds of things. So all those still apply. But what we had to do was we had to allow and facilitate more dwelling units per lot. And that's what these zoning amendments do. Again, they are mandated. It'll be interesting to see if any town doesn't adopt what happens. There's a provision in the law that says the state will come in and enforce them. I don't know how they'll do that, but it does say that. So being proactive, we took these through the process. The board had a public hearing, planning board had no issues with them. They thought this approach was good. I will say too, I put in the memo that the state, since this is in essence an unfunded mandate, the state did in that new law that extended it out for a year, created a fund for municipalities to seek funding from the state to compensate us for all the work that we had to do to change the zoning, to go through the public hearing process, to draft its amendments. And so it's a one-time shot, you have one-time ability to ask for funding from the state. Municipalities that have zoning and have public wastewater systems are allowed to ask for $10,000 up front. If you don't have that, you can ask for $5,000. I've already put in a request and invoice to the state for $10,000 max allowed. And I've done the numbers with Shenley, and we're already at like, I think 7,000 or 8,000 that we put into it, where it would work, so we'll get the 10,000 within the next month. The plan will then be to, again, have these go to the voters in November and address the accessory dwelling unit piece, come June of next year. Which is in time for the July 1 mandated implementation here for all of it. Does that help?
Yes.
Does that summarize it? It's been available, it's on our website, we have copies of it, we've had no comments really. I think there were some comments that we did receive that were, somebody did say, I can't even remember who it was concerned that we're gonna change, it's gonna change Camden forever, and the state can work with us to tweak this. The state can't work with us, they mandated this, it's a mandate. They were trying to actually, this person was trying to push affordable housing out to Hope and the other places outside of town. They didn't want them in Camden.
So these changes,
Yeah.
is this gonna have any tax implication to individual landowners?
Tax implications?
Any,
I haven't run that by Carrie yet, though I've asked Carrie the question about in the past of, if I have 5 acres.
right,
And minimum lot size is say 60,000 square feet or 30,000 square feet. Do you tax me on my ability to have multiple
Right.
lots? And they don't, that's not how it's assessed, the assessor to do that. They generally tax everything, they tax the house lot, and then everything else is generally rear land, is how it's done.
Allison?
Has there been any discussion about the stormwater stuff that's been brought up in the past during planning board site plan approvals and things like that, that our ordinance, I think, requires stormwater designs to be prepared for what, like 20-year storm, is that right?
Yeah.
Which we're having every couple
Yeah.
of months.
We didn't do that as part of this, no, we didn't,
And just that sentence, that one, just changing it to 50. It seems like that gets brought up every single time
Yeah.
there's any kind of site plan
Yeah.
review.
I mean, I would say that any large project, like an affordable housing project, likely that would be coming in if you get one, I mean, just now that they would be allowed. You add more units per lot, and so therefore you can, make a bigger development. Those are generally gonna trigger a state stormwater permit. They do design standards, they have to do their engineering to meet state stormwater law. So we haven't looked at that yet, Allison, the board's been deep into this stuff and accessory dwelling units and subdivision lately, so. I brought it up to them, that stormwater is an issue that we ought to be looking at and how to better improve our ordinance to deal with that in the performance standard section and in the site plan review section. Those are the 2 sections where you could address stormwater. Our performance standards section is not great at all, nor is the site plan review. But that is something I'm looking at. I've been meeting with an ad hoc little group, that's working on some, climate and environmental issues in town. I've been talking to them quite a bit, and they asked me the same question about stormwater, so it is something I'll be looking at for sure.
Not
It's just
not
we don't
making
have
a
any-
perfect answer if we good, just maybe just making that 20 to 50.
Yeah, and I did put some feelers out to some engineers on best way to handle that, and I haven't heard any good responses to that.
Board, anything? Comments from the public, please come up.
My name is Stephanie Smith. I live in Camden on Washington Street, and I'm on the board of the Mid-Coast Regional Housing Trust. And so I want to applaud efforts being made to make it possible to have housing for our workforce. As anybody knows, we're at a crisis level. We can't find housing for paramedics, police officers, And so I'm sure this is a heroic effort to balance the character of Maine while we have a community of people who need. So I just want to support efforts that we can be part of the solution that's statewide on housing, especially for the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I would say to add to that, the planning board had a public hearing last week, and you'll be seeing this on the 22nd. A minor tweak to our downtown business zone to allow multifamily apartments to be on the first floor in certain areas, not in our downtown core, but in certain areas of the B1. And that's again another attempt to try to facilitate multifamily housing in town. But that's something that will come before you in 2 weeks.
Jeremy, what is B1? Just can you?
It's the downtown business district is the B1, and so that encompasses Mechanic going almost all, if not all the way up to Milton Street, goes out Washington Street to Brimstone Consulting up at the top of the hill, and then it encompasses all of downtown, goes up David Dickey's properties, goes down Bayview, goes down Chestnut a piece, probably 7 house lots down from the post office, and then it actually goes all the way up to Union Street at Mount School.
Does that include the Knox Mill building?
Yes. That's one of the reasons why we're looking at it. Yeah.
It's really difficult on the town GIS system to go on there and just, if you want to see, okay, what's everything in the B1? You can't select that, and there's also not all they have is just, B1, B2, or whatever, doesn't have the full written out thing, and there's no way for you to look at the description of that, so every time I've gone on there to try to see where are all these properties we're talking about, it's very difficult, and it's maybe something that.
It's something I can talk about with those folks that manage the mapping for us. I will say for the next one on the 22nd, we do have some maps that we've generated for that will show you better.
Board, anything else? Public, Ray?
Just a quick question, really, for Jeremy.
Ray, could you-
Reintegration at Cove Road, Camden. This state law that has been passed, is there any provisions in there to prohibit these additional units being built on properties from just being turned into Airbnbs?
Very good question, Ray. I had asked the state that way back when the legislature, if they were going to address that as part of the law, because, that's, I think, the big issue with housing availability. And no, the law did say that it allows municipalities to regulate short-term rentals. We had that ability already, so we didn't need to say it again. But no, that's not in this provision. That's one of the reasons why we planning board decided, and Shannon and I decided it's probably best to look at accessory dwelling units at the same time moving forward as we're looking at short-term rentals, because I think they're tied together.
But so we couldn't just add in, right now, we're making all these changes that the state told us we have to make, can't we also just add in that the new housing created by this can't be short-term rentals? Why wouldn't we do that?
So what would you say? I guess in theory we could have done it, but I guess what you're implying is any project that would be permitted based on the new state law can't be accessory dwelling or can't be short-term rental.
I mean, we did that when we did our initial accessory dwelling unit changes, we stipulated.
We did,
So it's one of those
and we ran into some issues on enforcement and administering it. So I think the board is trying to look at this holistically and really get a better handle of what a definition of accessory dwelling unit is. We have a definition in our ordinance, and the state law has a separate definition. So we're trying to make sure that those are going to align. And then, this whole idea of regulating short-term rentals, we don't know where that's going to go in this town. I mean, at the select board meeting, the joint meeting, I think there was debate from both sides of the issue, and I think that was the initial salvo to this discussion, right? I don't think that's going to go away. I think the planning board wants to engage the community more on short-term rentals, because I know they have a certain strong belief in about short-term rentals, but listening at your joint meeting, there was some strong local opposition to regulating short-term rentals even more. So the board didn't want to muddy the water. They wanted to address that separately along with the accessory dwelling units moving forward. And so they're gonna do that. They just wanted to get these things moving forward.
Just go hard to take a right away from people that they, people that have existing short-term rentals are obviously opposed to doing certain things, but if we wait until we have community-wide consensus on short-term rentals,
Well, we're gonna have to do something with accessory dwelling units for sure for June. And I would say that there are some people in town that are regulated, that have short-term rentals that are registering compliant with the law, have no issue with further regulation of their short-term rentals.
Anything else from the public? Thank you, Jeremy.
So just a motion to move this voted in November, or in
We
November.
do need a motion. Okay,
so moved.
Second,
motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving into action items tonight, item 6A on our agenda is the consideration of a hawkers and peddler application for a popcorn vendor. Do we have anyone to speak on that,
yes,
Audra?
Courtney.
Yes, so Courtney's here, she's the applicant, we've brought hawkers and peddlers license applications in front of you before, so. It's a pretty recent change that these come to the select board, and it's for vendors that want to sell goods on town property, so. Hand it over to Courtney to explain the project, the business.
My name is Courtney Secord. I am over on Glenfield Circle in Camden. And since probably the end of May, beginning of June, I've been trying to build out a 5x8 trailer to sell popcorn out of, hopefully down on the landing somewhere, over back behind, kind of tucked in by the falls is where I would really like to go. I was really hoping to get it done, so it was all, I would have already had the Dean Jackson, health inspector, come and do that, but like just happens and gets away, and then I got sick for a few weeks, and so I wasn't able to work on it, so it's not finished yet. And so I know that you guys are still looking to get the health inspector done, but I did bring pictures of it, of what I have so far, so you can see what it looks like. But I guess I'm just wondering if that's something that you guys would be okay with me down there on the water. Once it's all done.
Board? Chris? Anything?
Well, what do we have precedent for allowing various vendors to be down there when it's not some sort of a special item? This is another harbor dog sort of thing, I would say.
This is on town property? This is on town,
Yes.
yeah, public landing.
It's that same thing again, where it's so hard when they come to us, not all at the same time, because we have a few that have been there forever and they kind of have this special privilege, and we've been paralyzed with figuring out a framework for dividing up the rest of it. I've been hoping for a long time that we can have a map of sort of everything, every existing license agreement that we have down there and what people pay. I think we all just want to be able to come up with a fair system that is beneficial to, the community and, fair for the people that want to compete for that space. And since we never looked at it all comprehensively, we all become paralyzed at different times. I think a lot of people would love to be able to get popcorn down at public landing. Harbor Dogs isn't open a lot. My kids complain about, they just like to have popcorn. Although we just, that area over by the falls was used for private parking for businesses through an arrangement that we revoked a few months ago, sort of all in this interest of fairness and making that space available to the public. The few entities have expressed interest in making it more of a park-like area for people to sit. I personally want to say yes, but I don't know that I have like a fair framework to forward. I wish that we would all at once put out a request for proposals and be able to, you know, review them all at once. We said no to the lobster shack for various reasons.
Where was that going to be?
But
Like,
Yeah, but
By the horse.
So I guess, to Chris's point, when we don't have sort of like a, policy for how the public landing is used or specific spots that you've allocated for vendors. This is really the process. We allow under our ordinance for hawkers and peddlers, and the process is they fill out an application and they come before you and you approve it or you don't. So until we have, something else, this is the best that we can offer people for a path forward to being a vendor on town property.
Is there anything to prevent somebody from going down and using a parking spot? I think the issue comes from reserving space that could otherwise be used for something else. Is there anything to stop somebody from paying for parking when parking has to be paid for down there, putting a trailer there and selling popcorn out of the?
Well, like I said, if you're gonna sell something and you're on town property, we have an ordinance and a process, and this is what it is.
But it seems like it would be maybe potentially an easier pathway if it's not space. You're not taking away a public bench, you're allowing somebody to pay for parking.
Well, I'm just saying, we've identified this and defined it in an ordinance.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter if it's in a parking space or wherever, you still have to.
Well, the select board could say, yeah, you can do it, but you have to be in parking space, is one
Right,
scenario.
I mean, you have a lot of different options for how you can handle this if you wanna support it, like you can specify where you'd like it to go. Out, there's just a lot of options for how you could deal with this if this. When people come forth with requests to do things on town property, if you'd like to support that.
so I would like to, can I take my?
Please.
I am not opposed to having vendors down on the landing. I do feel that we kind of need to have a little bit of a handle on what space is available, where we would want them. Do we want them spread out from one corner to the other? Do we want to, because there's also been talk about reallocating parking spaces on a licensing agreement and things like that. So not just changing things into another park area. There's just been so much talk about what is going on down there that I would feel very silly saying yes when I've said no to other things. Personally, we said yes to the not the touch tank, but the aquarium tank down there. And I have gotten only 2 good emails. All the other emails is, what are you doing? That is a mess. So I just feel like we need to take a little bit more of a step back and figure out as a board and as a town, what we want to do with that space down there on the landing and how we really want it to look. In my opinion, I would feel very silly in saying yes. Not that I don't think it's a great idea. I just don't think that we're in a spot to say yes to you, no to another, no to somebody else based on if I like popcorn or lobsters better, which I actually like both pretty simple. So that's what I have to say.
Sophia.
Yeah, no, I think the issue is a recurring one on having a town policy on what we want to do with the public landing, how we want to develop it, what type of shops we want, or pubs or trailers we want to have. I think the aesthetics matter to people immensely. And, I'm not a popcorn eater, but I'm not opposed to popcorn. And I feel that it's hard for us because these are one-shot deals outside of a comprehensive policy for the town landing, which I'm hoping we can put on the priorities list actually, because I think, people are coming to us like almost every other select board meeting asking us to legislate on this. So I would, I support businesses. I've supported the lobster shack. I voted against the fish tank. Which I'm trying to be consistent here, but it's hard absent of a policy.
Audra, how long is the term of this agreement?
It's a year.
Year,
Has anyone else to ask to put something in that space?
not that specific space.
Where the garden, what we've been talking about.
And how would that space that is being used, how would that violate views that people have? Isn't that a viewpoint for the waterfall coming down that way, if it's the green space over there?
From what I've looked at, it's quite a large, I wouldn't be on the grassy area, there's quite a big dirt parking lot, parking space. And it's, I mean, 5 by 8 sounds pretty big, but it's actually little, when you kind of see it. But it seems like it would not take up, there would still be even parking enough for maybe like 4 or 5 cars once that's in there, like in terms of thinking about how much space it would take up, it's not a lot. So I don't think, and I wouldn't want to necessarily be obstructing any views or anything like that.
Who uses that the gravel area now?
Right now, we revoked the license agreements for all the businesses that did use it before, so theoretically, you know, it's not area encumbered by anybody.
What was the reason for revoking those agreements?
Well, it really had to do with, you know, equity of who had parking down there and who didn't, so, you know, there were sort of agreements that had been made over the years with a number of different businesses that gave some parking and some didn't have parking. So when we were looking at rolling out paid parking across that entire lot, we tried to look for all the agreements that gave specific businesses parking and revoked either those certain provisions or, you know, anything that gave a business specific parking spots. Because the rationale behind that was there are actually a lot of businesses that are clustered around the landing, and a lot of them, you know, weren't specifically given parking by the town.
Is that the best space for something like this? Just given proximity to foot traffic and parking, is there a better spot that would be that might be less obtrusive and maybe be more foot traffic down there?
I think that's all subjective.
Well, Lake Beach or, does
Well,
anybody have
but
any,
just,
any
you know.
plans for other places that we've got all these public places that might be a little easier to say yes to?
Well, I was just thinking, even in the parking lot itself, I mean,
No,
is there a spot that's better?
There's a dumpster down there.
I think, you know, I do think we need like Sophie said, we need a comprehensive ordinance or comprehensive plan for the public landing. In the interim, are we going to do nothing? How long would it take to get that together? I mean,
right. How far along? Yeah, also your turn.
It's very minor, I mean, it sounds major, but very minor things, which is the plumbing, and then just put what I'm calling like the, well, essentially it's the, sorry, brain, like the shelving, I'm calling it like the flavor shelf, where people can kind of like put on their own mixed flavors, that sort of thing. And then the plumbing, and that's, so if all weather works out, well, then it should be done by the next week.
So is your awning greater than the 5 by 8?
No.
That's
No.
within the 5 by 8?
It has to be, according to, you know, DHS, there has to be an awning that goes over the whole thing.
so to me, it sounds like there's a consensus on the board that we would support businesses like this on the public land and giving a more comprehensive plan, an equitable plan for down there. We just need, we need more information. We need a better system. In the interim, I'm reluctant to tell everybody no. I would suggest that this is, I don't have any problems with 1-year terms. 1-year terms are good for the town. We can make an assessment. We can see how it works. It's almost like a pilot program. And it gives us time to implement a better system. And we can take the data that we've learned, how this went, take a look at Harbor Dogs or whoever else is down there. And incorporate our observations from those sorts of things into how we want to allocate space there. So from that regard, I think this is a very low risk for the town. And it does help us in some manner. Stephanie?
I do just want to point out that I've been waiting for a few months, probably 6 months now, to talk about the parking, the allocated parking down there. I've asked a number of times throughout the past year to bring that up about if we wanted to allow people to apply for licenses to have their parking spots back or things like that. So again, I would be very hesitant to push that thought process aside and just jump on to this.
Yeah, I guess this is an area with the use of the public landing where I want to hear a lot more from the public about what they want that space to be used for. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna, yeah.
Like, I don't know if I heard a bunch from people that said, I want a lot more businesses down there. That's fine with me. If more people, I guess I just need more perspective from the public when they know it's an opportunity for them to weigh in just in general about what they want down there. Not just having to come to each little meeting where something pops up, you know, we're not gonna get broad public input in this way, so.
No, I agree with Tom that just because we don't have a very good process right now, it shouldn't stop somebody from trying a decent idea. And we don't have a lot of people, except for whatever happened with the Lobster Shack, who are coming with ideas. We don't have many.
I have so many.
Sophie?
Yeah, what is a decent idea? I don't know, right? So Mark Brashear selling his lobsters from his boat into a tiny little lobster shack, to me sounds like a decent idea. So I think I have a hard time understanding what the criteria is. I'm not opposed to businesses, I'm not opposed to trying it out, but some consistency would be helpful, so to everyone around, so that they don't come up to those select board say, oh, it's lottery day. Maybe my business is gonna be approved, maybe not. That's yeah.
Please hear you, ma'am.
Barb Olin, Arnett, Camden. Live here for this, but, and I'm on the Camden Garden Club, and I'm not on the specific committee, but I know that the Camden Garden Club was approached by different people who were like commenting that the public landing needs more shaded areas for people to sit. And that's a perfect spot for them to sit. And then we talked about maybe having the garden club make it more easy for people who are in walkers or whatever to get over there, maybe chair seats, benches and things like that. We looked into getting a branch to get benches. So there is other people who want to use that space and have requested that it be used by the LA popcorn. And against that, I'm just saying, it's not like it's an unused area. And there's one little bench there and there's, I go down there, they do the whole watering and feeding of the plants that are down there, and there's always people sitting there. So there's a need for more shade places for people, especially old people, to sit in the shade and such. So before it's just become a, you know, something else. They're just keep it in the background.
Thank you, Barb. Please back here.
Joyce Lawrence, I live on Chinfield Drive. And I don't want to be negative, but I also want to stand up for the shops in town. And there are a lot of people who would love to have maybe a little cart whenever the traffic was there, but a lot of these shops already sell popcorn and lobster and candy and whatever else they can sell to make their rents for the summertime. And if we open up to one, how can you close the door to another? Or I just feel that we need to encourage the tourists who are walking around to shop in the shops that are already here And if somebody wants to open a popcorn stand on a private lot, I mean, Stuart Smith stood up and said he's the biggest landowner in town, when there was some other options here. Talk to him, maybe he has a space that you can put it on his board. You know, I just hope that you look into that, because the shops need all the business they can get to.
Thanks, Joyce. Ray?
Very great. Okay, and, I don't want to be negative about this either, okay, one other thing I think the select board has to recognize is that there are signs, I believe they're still there, do not feed the ducks and the geese in the harbor. And I can just see kids taking popcorn, you know, for the side in the harbor. And I don't know how you regulate that.
Well, Courtney was right on top of that. I would.
Anything else from the public? Thank you. Courtney, please.
Sounds like there's a lot of talk too about parking and stuff, and where I wouldn't want to take up a parking space, and I'm not sure how much the Camden Garden Club of that space. I mean, there's seemed like very minimal green space, so I don't know if that's the area that they're talking about using, but even if they wanted to push it over, it would take a lot of money and a lot of time to create something usable in the like grassy dead space there. So kind of like you guys were saying, like a pilot program, I'm totally happy to be a guinea pig. And I mean,
Courtney, please.
Yeah.
Hey, people in the general audience, if you could just, if you need to have a conversation, if you could take it outside, please. Courtney, go ahead.
I'm totally like, in my mind of how I'm picturing it, it's like, it's not out in the way, it's kind of back, kind of tucked in. So it wouldn't be blocking any, and I think benches down there are a great idea. I was going to ask you guys if eventually I could get a couple down there just for people who are eating whatever, that can come and snack and have a drink. I want to eventually add some little baked goods in there too, but, just feel like, and the season also is very, like, for me, even if I was able to do it now going forward, I mean, it could probably be done by the end of September. There's not many, warm days, so it'd be a very short, summer kind of season into early fall, so it would be too long of a time period, at least.
Thank you. Sophie?
But so if we grant this license for a year, it'll go until the end of, it'll go to August 7, 2024. Do we have any option to run a tiny little pilot program just for this season? Because without preempting using that space for next year, if we want to put benches or things like that, is that something we should, I mean, I'm just
Conditional to the end of this.
we can make it.
Allison?
So there wasn't a part of the reason, but that's all gravel right there, is because we're letting it all be used for parking, and like people that work at the Chamber of Commerce, and they send me all these pictures and weighed in about how there used to be more grass there, and the town has let it become this place where there isn't grass. And so part of this was a larger discussion about making that more green. Mrs. Bach, when she could clean up that whole area, wanted that whole thing green. So that's just like, that's what's going on there. Would you be parking? I mean, it's the parking of trailers that, that's the issue. There are a bunch of people that are upset that Harbor Town has 2 trailers instead of 1.
I didn't know they make people.
Have you thought about selling software at Harbor Dogs maybe?
Where are they? Is there 2? Are they right next to each other?
Yeah, let's stay on track.
I know,
We do have a long agenda tonight.
I mean, I just feel like mine wouldn't even be close to where, I mean, it would be on opposite ends, of the parking lot, but it just wouldn't even be in like a high volume type space.
there.
I don't think I'm allowed to technically, but I'm happy to pay a fee because parking and bursting a trailer is not my forte, but that could come later. But I'm technically with Hopper to other places, I believe you cannot leave it. You have to move it every day. And
That's correct.
I'm happy to make a motion that we approve like a pilot project for POP that will operate until October, is it October 30th or 31st, no, this year. Or make it conditional, or either for a shorter period of time, or make it for a year, because you asked for a year, but making it conditional, as Audra suggested, that we're not redeveloping that area for something else. So yeah, I'm happy to make a motion in that sense, and if there's a fee to be paid, we can talk with Audra about, so you don't have to move it. Just to test,
Sure,
with no,
whatever you guys, yeah.
just for this short, summer has been so horrible for everybody in town.
So could you state the motion?
Yes, so I'm making a motion that we approve the 1-year license for POPT. Conditional is that the town will not be using that space next year for a different purpose, knowing that we will be looking at hopefully redeveloping the public land. And that if there's a fee to be discussed, Audra can address it.
Normally we would look at things like, we've got overflowing trash cans there, we've got. I would like to find a way to say yes for a short period of time, that's not a year. But saying, a couple months to see how it goes, if it's not something being left there.
So you'd like to maybe modify her motion to say end of October?
I feel so torn about this, but if it's, I don't think we can just say yes to this just because Courtney's my friend and I'm rooting for her and, but yeah, if it were some sort of, if someone could give me the language of something, almost like how we let not the Lobster Festival, the Windjammer Festival, people get to be down there for a period of time. But we'd be given Courtney a 2-month period of time.
I'm happy to amend my motion to, I move that we give Courtney until the 31st of October to try a POP.
I'll second the motion. I will second the motion, vote in second, motion made in second, discussion further.
I don't want to know what's happening.
All those in favor? Opposed? Allison, what's your name?
She's in
I'll
favor,
go in favor.
Favor, okay.
so 4-1.
What was Chris?
Chris changed, so it's 4-1.
Okay, wait, can we have this for the
So
All
for
those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 4-1. Thank you, Courtney.
And I also, just so you know, I do have to. Trash cans and such, that I'll be just with
Item 6B on our agenda tonight is the request to approve a renewal victualler license for Lucky Betty's and Mariners Restaurant. Is there anyone here tonight to speak on behalf of those applications? Moving to the board,
I move that we approve both applications.
I'll second.
motion made and seconded, further discussion. All those in favor? 5-0, thank you.
Just don't sell popcorn.
Item 6C, the committee, board, commission appointments for the Knox County Budget Committee and the Zoning Board. Let's go ahead and start with the Knox County Budget Committee. I reached out to Peter Lindquist. I think he would make a good representative on the Knox County Budget Committee, and he was amenable to it. Did we have any applications for that particular position, Audra?
No, it was reaching out to see if you could find someone.
Did anybody else have anybody in mind or reach out to anyone?
No.
Yeah.
I have a question about the process, but,
Go ahead.
so I know that typically the county charter says, I just need a reminder of this because it's been something that we vote on. And before we appointed somebody because
So
instead of having it go on the ballot,
it's an elected position, but if nobody runs and puts their name on the ballot, the process is that the select board appoints someone. You all did appoint someone and they dropped off, so that you're appointing a person to replace that other person.
The next opportunity for it to go on the ballot, is that typically voted on in June or in November? I think it's June.
It's June.
Actually, no, with counties, they follow the state election cycle, so it is November. And also the county is currently undergoing a charter revision. They have a charter commission that's working on revising their charter.
Okay, so if it's November, then why aren't we putting it on the ballot in November, or why?
Would this be a
Because normally
two,
somebody
would
runs
this
to
be a
write it.
2-month appointment?
Well, it's not the town's responsibility to put
Okay.
county positions on the ballot, and they haven't requested that we put it on the ballot. We missed their cycle. They have a very specific cycle that they stick to because it coincides with the state election cycle and when their positions are up. So because this position missed the county budget cycle for when people are elected, it brings it to the select board for the appointment process. And beyond that, I really don't know because I'm not familiar enough with the county charter.
Because normally somebody goes on the budget, if nobody on the ballot, and if nobody runs, then you write.
Like I said, we're
Somebody-
not responsible for the
I agree with
county's
that. I agree with
election,
that.
like when they send us.
So is this a 1-year appointment, a 2-year appointment, a finishing of somebody's term, when will the next opportunity be for?
So it would have been, the past November that the person would have had to have run to start this November.
For a 4-year term? Isn't that a 4-year term?
I think it's a 4-year term, yes.
Sophie,
I was gonna ask the same question about the term.
Chris,
So Peter wants to do this.
he does.
How will this affect? I think he's been active on the town budget too. Can he still do both?
No.
Or preclude him from doing town?
His term ended on that.
Yeah, it's no longer.
So it would be for 4 years?
Mhm.
I'll make a motion that we approve Peter Lindquist to the
Next county budget.
Knox County Budget Committee.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0, thank you. Motion carries. Item 6D tonight. Oh, excuse me. Carrying on with item 6C, a committee board appointment for the zoning board.
So I just want to make a little tiny point. So I don't think we had these in the packet till about noontime today. Is that right, Audra?
I don't know, I'm looking now to see. Who you have, it should just be reappointing, John French and Deb Chapman.
Right. But we didn't. Did you
Yeah.
get some in there?
All we had was John French until today.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jeff Chapman's been on there.
That's been the chair.
right. Well, I would just like to ask that we just stop having these late minute like additions to the agenda like this, because I prepare and look at these things like a lot, and having applications come to me this soon, it doesn't allow me time to wrap my head around it, to think about it, I mean, a lot of times I even reach out to the applicants and ask them questions about, why do you want to be on this? What's the issue? So, looking at Deb Chapman's and Rosie's application, like, I haven't even had a chance to look at them and think about it and, weigh how I even feel. I just don't feel like I am giving my best to the town when I have late additions like this to look at.
So what you could do, because they are sort of at a point where they're having a hard time with a quorum. You could reappoint John French and sort of table the other ones and come back to them at the next meeting.
That's a fair suggestion. I would also, Deb's been acting chair. Early this spring, there was some confusion on the terms of certain members.
It's been really hard to manage. I know it seems like an easy thing to do. It's not so easy sometimes. But Deb has been the chair for at least 3 years. And we need a good, strong chair. She's been the chair. She's asking for, it was late in the day yesterday. It was yesterday that we realized that she was not still an active member technically. And we reached out and said, Deb, do you still want to do this? And she said, oh, yeah, absolutely. And so she came down yesterday to submit that so we could get on here. John French has been wanting to get re-upped again. And so I would try to bring John and Deb together on this today. We have a couple of zoning board applications that are moving forward. It's really, really hard to get a quorum, and if we don't have those two members, then we're gonna have at least two applications for, and these are projects in the shoreline zone that are gonna sit in limbo until we get new members appointed. Those are two members that have been there for a number of years. I think they've been doing a good job. And they're not new. So I appreciate that. I do, Steph, but with members that are existing and have been active and committed to this town and participating on the board level and are wanting to re-up, I think I would recommend you move those two. And then like with Rosie, she hasn't been on the zoning board yet, and we know we still have some others to fill. So I think there's two other ones that we need to fill. So I would like to get Deb and John back on, just as soon as we can start hearing some of these applications that are kind of going to be coming for the zoning board. If we just do John, then we're still behind on where we need to be. And Deb, since you've been here, she wants to do it again. I'd recommend that you do that.
Sophie.
Yeah, I'm completely on board with this. I think it's great. Like we cannot, they both have proven their value and their service. And they're willing to do it again. And I would hate to see applications just not being addressed because we don't have quorum, especially since those two already have the experience. I would completely support that and table on the other two.
Allison.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm actually the liaison to the ZBA, and I watch most of the meetings on YouTube because sometimes it's not a good time for me to be there, but I'm on the emails where Jeannie is trying to establish when everybody can meet, because it's an as needed meeting. They don't have regular meetings, so an application comes forward, and then you see all this email back and forth trying to figure out when they can get a quorum of people, and it's rolling. So I would say,
just found out yesterday that Deb wasn't gonna be on
Deb,
this.
yeah, we didn't realize
Well,
Deb
then
actually expired in 2023. So she expired, I think it was June.
Please don't say Deb expired.
they made a mistake. They made a mistake about like it didn't end up on the agenda. It sounds like to re-up somebody, and so technically her term had expired and it wasn't realized.
Correct.
I think you're right. I agree with you about, seriously appointing people, and that we should pull John French and Deb Chapman. You can watch hours of them on YouTube discussing this stuff. They're doing a very good job. We should hold off on the others, make sure that everybody in the public knows that there is a desperate need almost always on the PDA, and we'd love more applications, and then consider that, any other openings with more time.
Yeah, I think I agree. We need to, those committee nominations, we need to have a better process. I mean, it's a recurring issue as well. But I'm happy to move that we nominate John French and Deb Chapman to the CBA, and that we table the nomination of other two spots.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion?
I just want to say just one other thing on that is that this has been a recurring problem of having applications presented, and that's really what I am trying to push forward here. This is an opportunity to say, we've just been having these issues. I mean, we have a very old town. We should be able to know when these things are coming up. We really need to take a better.
I would say
look
that
at them.
managing committee appointments is a full-time job almost in and of itself. And the more committees you bring on, the more difficult it gets. The more information that you ask of applicants, the more cumbersome and difficult it gets. So until there's a process change or a requirement change or a way that you want to do it differently, it's always going to be difficult.
Do you have an Excel spreadsheet that shows when committees are coming
We
up?
do, but it all got really thrown out of whack by COVID, and we're still kind of clawing our way back from that.
And it's the recruitment too, because you have lots of people that want to be like, oh, the energy committee or this thing that I want, but it's these committees that are not glamorous, like the ZBA, it doesn't. We don't have our doors beaten down for this kind of, you have to go out and recruit.
Right, and then so say you have somebody who's applied for multiple committees and they want to do something different, then you have to go and find their application from maybe a year and a half ago when they applied to be on the ZBA and the energy committee and the, harbor committee, so.
So
I
Audra,
mean, I hear you, Stephanie, but it's just not a great, it's very cumbersome to manage committees and membership to committees.
so we have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor? 5-0, John French and Deb Chapman, is that who it was?
Yep.
Are back on the zoning board.
And Deb Chapman is well and alive.
Item 6D on the agenda tonight. The order for the notice of hearing on charter amendments, which are in the packet.
So just a bit of a process point with this. So anytime that the select board is going to put forth a charter amendment to voters, the way that you need to notice it is different than, other times that we need to notice a public hearing, like for, any other sort, like an ordinance amendment is different. You actually need to do it by formal order. So, that's in addition to the actual proposed charter amendments to send to voters and the memo, you have an order that you would have to approve and all of you would have to sign, and that's what goes forward to be noticed in the newspaper for a public hearing. And the public hearing would happen as part of the on the night that you're approving the warrant. You'd also have the public hearing for this, and you would approve the warrant as well if you decide to place this on that.
Stephanie?
So, again, I think this was placed in our packet at noontime today.
I
It
mean,
says August 8th, and I didn't see it yesterday when I looked at it.
I don't know about that because the memo and everything was done prior to that. It was done on Friday. I think,
but
no,
the
it says dated August 8th, because that's presumably when you're all gonna sign.
Yeah,
Not that it was placed in with that.
I think the charter amendments and all of that were,
No, you've had those for a long time. I just put them in here again. But they were in the packet on Friday.
You mean like the detail?
The red line version of the.
Blue line version or?
yeah,
I don't feel a little bit better about not being.
well, that's what I'm saying, is that, I mean, I looked at this and I opened it up this afternoon before I came here, and I was just like, oh my God, are we voting on sending these amendments, these present lines right now? Is that what we're doing?
So these would be the actual amendments where it's red line or blue line, whatever color it shows up in there.
And that's what we're voting on right now to send to the order.
Yes, that's
And then
that's
the
the public
hearing.
hearing that you're voting on having an order to approve, yeah.
So at the hearing, if we have other amendments or we want to change things, we could at that time as well.
No, so really the public hearing would be, yes, you move forward with putting it on the warrant, or no, you don't.
We've agreed on all those changes already.
Yes.
We've already discussed them conceptually. We've already discussed them. So there's
Right,
no,
but
sorry,
we haven't,
there's nothing new. It's just really moving into the administrative process of drafting the warrant, correct?
Well, this is having the public hearing
Okay,
or putting it on the warrant.
sorry.
So only the blue things are new.
Yes.
Yes.
I think the memo was in the packet, but maybe not the detailed.
correct.
No, all of it should have been in there. It was all sent out on Friday. I don't know if maybe the order got rearranged in the PDF or whatever happened.
It is a short turnaround time, just in general, but I don't have it, even when it is on Friday, but I don't know. But
So Audra, then can we break down the order on the select board and the public meetings?
Yes,
it's
yeah,
on
oh,
page
you mean what,
96.
you want me to go through what the change would be?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yes, so, let me go through the first, I'll start at the top, because there was something that was overlooked with the charter amendments from last June, and that was in Article 1. So I'm gonna point that out, so it was in, when it got to the, section 103, or sorry, section 102. So, when you change from budget committee members being, appointed instead of elected, there was still a reference to, the budget committee members being elected. That was in Article 6, so that would be removed. Because, you know, that Article 1, Section 2 talks about what goes on the ballot. So it's specifically saying members of the budget committee would be on the ballot, and that's not happening anymore. So that's removed, and that's to make it consistent with changes that voters already approved in June. So then, going down to.
You also have the capital plan with you. too,
Yes,
right?
the capital plan as well, because that's not something that, is voted on, it's, you know, included as part of the budget, but it sits outside of it. And informs the budget. So. Just scrolling down to Article 6. So section 6. 4. 6.4, so select board action on the proposed budget. So for public meetings, so the select board shall hold at least 2 public meetings. Where the proposed budget is discussed, the first meeting shall be, and it used to be say noticed and conducted as a public hearing. So this changes that, because having it noticed and conducted as a public hearing is it's just an awkward process that doesn't really fit into either the budget process as it currently works, or how we get ready for town meeting with the warrant. So you'd still be having 2 public meetings, you just wouldn't have the first one being noticed and conducted as a public hearing, but it would still serve the same purpose, so it would be, you know, it would be a noticed meeting. So just like any select board meeting or any meeting that you have, but it just wouldn't show up as like a formal notice in a printed publication. So that's really the only change with that. And it would serve the same function, so you would deliberate and consider comments received from the public before the select board finalizes the town warrant. And also it specifies that both the budget committee's recommendations and the town manager's proposed public budget would be presented at that meeting. So, you know, that would be the first meeting. It's more, you know, for discussion purposes. The select board would look at both the town manager's budget and the budget committee's budget and receive public comment during that meeting. And then the second meeting would be that, and instead of being shall, it would be turned to may, an informational meeting to answer questions on the select board's proposed budget. So this would be after you have a meeting where you not just receive public comment, but also take your action and have your internal debate on the budget. And the next meeting would be a meeting if you want to have some sort of forum where you answer questions on the budget that's already gone onto the ballot and is being presented before voters. So it's keeping those 2 meetings, but it's one making the first one so it doesn't have to be a noticed public hearing in a printed publication. And then the second informational meeting wouldn't be a requirement, but it would be something that you have the option of doing once you've already approved the budget and it's gone to the warrant to be printed. So it's just an informational meeting. And that was sort of the intent when that charter amendment was made for how those meetings would be conducted. It just got codified a little differently than what was originally discussed. And the other change down here is that in section 605(3), it talks about the budget being available on the town website, because that's another place that we commonly publish all the information on the budget. And so section 6.06, town vote on the budget. So 606.2, form of the budget articles. So this just sort of aligns it with the way that we've been presenting the budget articles to voters since really 2020, when it was put on the ballot instead of open town meetings. So it's both the recommendations of the select board and the budget committee that are included on the ballot for both revenues and expenses. And voters are asked to adopt the select board's recommendations. So that's how it's worked, you know, over the last few years that this has been done. The part that's been taken out is, it used to say there shall be separate budget line item warrant articles for each, the select board, you know, the select board amount for each category. And so this is just making it clear that those show up, but it's the bottom line expense and revenue numbers that everybody's voting on. So that language is very unclear. So it's just clarifying that that's what shows up, and it's the same format that everybody's familiar with at this point and that we've had on the ballot for the last 4 years.
Roger, all that, and in addition, I see removing the endowment fund from the town budget, which is section 6.02.
Yes, thank you, Tom. That's a good pickup as well. So it said that the endowment funds would also be voted on, but that's not appropriate, because in the trust documents for a lot of those endowment funds, it specifies how they're managed and how they're distributed, and it has nothing to do with the town vote, and it can't have anything to do with the town vote.
Any questions, board? Allison?
So it seems like we've had a lot of conversations about how the budget process isn't all that enjoyable or efficient or perfect. It never has been, and it's imperfect in different ways. We were sort of talking about having a broader conversation about exactly how all that could go and how the select board interacts with the budget committee and all that. It seems like, and I was kind of thinking that was going to happen before we did this, but is this our last opportunity? Is it urgent that we make some of these kind of just small, almost cleaning up types of changes right now? And then if we want to have a larger conversation about how the budget process should go, we do that at another time.
I would absolutely agree with you, and I think that when this was discussed, I don't know, a couple months ago now, that was pretty much the consensus of everyone, that this was sort of the first pass at making, you know, making the process consistent with how it works right now. So at a bare minimum, and not adding all these sort of additional layers of process to a time where we're already you know, meeting a lot of timeframes and deadlines to, you know, get the budget approved and also get the warrant ready for town meeting. But in addition to that, we do need to have that broader conversation. You are going to have the opportunity to do that, and it could be something that you put on the ballot for June.
So my recollection of why we wanted changes to this is because we kind of ignored the charter when we did the select board process this year. We did not have the meeting before we finalized our vote on the town warrant. And I was dismissed in that meeting when I brought that up, to be perfectly honest. And it turns out that it is, as I said, it's 6.05. So I do like where we have kept it in there, that we will have, there shall be a meeting. Those words are very important in that sentence. And deliberate, consider the comments received during the public meeting. Changed it from hearing, I'm totally fine with that, before the select board finalizes the annual town warrant. I am a little bit concerned with, before we finalize the town warrant, so that still kind of states that we could vote on the budget without having town input first? Is that,
So,
because the town warrant, like right now, the town warrant, we will vote on next week. So if we were gonna have the vote on and the discussion, it just means that we need to have a discussion at some point, but not before the select board votes on the budget.
so what this would obligate you to do is to hold at least two public meetings on the budget. So it specifies that the first meeting has to be before you take action and put anything on the warrant.
Right.
And then, but the second one could happen afterwards.
So-
In practical reality though, most years you have multiple meetings before you know, vote to put the budget and everything else on the warrant.
I know, but like in a year like this year, we didn't have that. We didn't have any meeting for the town to come in and talk to us till after we voted to put the budget forward, so we didn't have any town input. And that was one of the major reasons that I wanted to have this rewritten, is to make it so that we would have, whether it's just a public meeting or public hearing before the select board. So I would like that to say, before the select board votes on and finalizes the budget, not finalizes the annual town warrant. I would prefer that to say a meeting before the select board votes on the town budget. I think it's
What you're looking for is input from the town.
before the
Before
select
we have
board,
to say, yeah, this is gonna
Correct.
happen. Yeah,
because it kind of sounds like we're saying we just want to have the availability of having two meetings before we say this is the warrant and how it's gonna be voted on.
I'd say that this is kind of the other side of that is you all can make any changes you want to the budget and how it appears on the warrant until you approve the warrant. So I guess, you know, like you can do whatever you want, like however you want to manage that process as a select board. You have a lot of flexibility as long as you're at least following these rules. So you can all decide as a group, you know, this is gonna be the schedule for how we review our budget. The first meeting, this is the purpose of it. It's gonna be that sort of public information gathering meeting before we deliberate as a group. Second meeting, we're gonna deliberate as a group, approve our budget. And, you know, then we vote on the warrant, and maybe afterwards we have that informational meeting you talked about where you just come in and answer questions. So you have, I mean, and that doesn't have to be spelled out in the charter. You as a board can make that decision that that's how you want to manage your own process for approving a budget, approving your budget and putting it forward to voters.
So the question is, do we want to change the schedule and the charter, or just change the schedule? Because there seems to be consensus that we do prefer a different schedule than we had for the fiscal 20.
I would like it to be in the charter, because then that would mean that it has to be this order. And
I was cautioned against being too prescriptive in your charter because it's so easy to run afoul of incredibly prescriptive language about how you do things. And a lot of times it's not deliberate, it's nobody trying to disenfranchise anyone,
Right.
or it's just you having there, like I said, during the budget process and the town meeting process, there's already a lot of deadlines that you're obligated to meet. There's a lot of things that you need to get through. And if you hem yourselves in too much through charter amendments that you have to do it a certain way every time, you're not really allowing yourself the flexibility for changing circumstances in the future. So I think, you know, having some key things that are required in there, like, you know, at least two meetings, you have to get public input at one of them, you have to explain stuff to the public at another one. That's probably broad enough that you can make more specific rules around that meet the needs of the circumstances at the time.
my experience on the board is that we have not had that flexibility. We have not had the flexibility to have public input. We haven't even had the flexibility of having a discussion. Maybe this year we will, but going forward, I'm going to push that we do put that one meeting is held before we finalize the budget to send on. Because if we go down, the second meeting, May. These words are extremely important, because if we decide that we don't want to have that second meeting, we don't have to. Because it says, if we decide to go with it, the second meeting may be an informational meeting. It doesn't say shall be. Like, those are just very important words that can be manipulated. And I don't mean intentionally to keep everybody, like, manipulate people. I'm just saying it can be, we don't have time this year to have a second meeting. We don't have to, because it says second meeting May. So I would be amendable to keeping that, as long as we do amend 6.051, that we do have public input before the select board finalizes their vote on the budget. I don't think that that's out of the ordinary, and it could happen during the discussion of the budget that night that we're going down through with the budget. It could happen at that public meeting. And it has not, like, my experience this year, that it was not open to public comment. So in future years, maybe going forward, we do have that, but in my experience in this past year is what is pushing me forward to say, I feel like we need to make sure that we have public input before the select board finalizes the vote on the budget.
Allison?
I mean, I think you're preparing for a scenario where we don't think that the people on the select board, it's kind of like how much you want to put in your charter to force a future select board to do something, and how much flexibility do you want to try to give the people that you elected. I sometimes think about it differently, like, well, when I'm off the select board, this is how I want it to go. I don't want to have to go to every single meeting. I mean, there are times, the reason that they've made it sort of be an informational meeting is because sometimes what people legitimately need is to understand what a yes vote means and what a no vote means. And I think the whole budget process is completely broken because we dedicate all of this time to having these select boards sit there while the budget committee goes through this very rigorous process where we're not allowed to say anything lately. And then it's the public comes to some of those, it's not clear to the public where they're supposed to give input. And what we really should, rather than micromanaging all the wording right now, we should be talking about like how to create a meaningful experience for both the select board and for the budget committee and the town to provide input. I don't think we're gonna get there tonight, so I can live with probably anything that anybody's
And I
suggested
mean,
here.
a lot of what you're all asking for and what you all want, you don't need a charter amendment
Right.
to do it. It's just a procedural change. The majority of the budget process that everyone's familiar with, that's evolved over time, and we've all sort of inherited it, but you can change it at any time. It's pretty broad in the charter how it has to happen and when there are key sort of, milestones and key things in the process, like, the first budget that comes out is the town manager's budget, and then it's the budget committee review, and then it's the final budget is the select board, and that goes to voters. That's the framework, but beyond that, how that all happens and what happens in between, and then who discusses what with who and when, that can all be changed by any of you at any time. So, I mean, as a board, any board at any time who wants to change the process can do that. So you're not hemmed into that. This is something that we can try this year. I mean, the first year I got here, I proposed instead of all 25 people on the budget committee reviewing every single line item, that we split up into groups and do it differently, and people come back and present what they learned about it. And everybody thought that was a terrible idea, so we didn't do that. But I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that it can be done, and we're all in the perfect position to drive that.
What words, Stephanie, would you want to change to drive this home to move on?
I would
to the
just
next
like to
section?
change on 6.051, line 3 and 4, if you look on it. Comment received during a public hearing before the select board finalizes their vote on the budget before the annual town warrant. Hearing has been- That's all, that's, I just want
Yeah,
the,
but one in there,
I
in the
just want the
chart,
public
yeah,
to have their say. I had a lot, I had people coming up to me on the street. People don't approach me on the street all the time. I know they do you, but they don't walk up on the street and approach me, and they were. And I got many comments wanting to just have the chance to,
do I make a motion to go ahead and approve this with Stephanie's modification?
Second,
Motion made and seconded, further discussion.
I personally don't think, I mean, I think this board is really committed to having public input. I think we've proven that more than once. If it's the way that we're gonna go for the changes, that's fine with me, but I'm really worried that by being too prescriptive, we box ourselves into something that doesn't allow for change, have the flexibility we need as, steward of this budget. So I'm gonna approve this, but I really look forward to redesigning this budget committee process. I think workshops between the budget committee and the town and the select board will be much more efficient. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do, but I do think that getting the public input is fine if that's how the majority of the board wants to do it. That's fine with me, but I'm cautioning against too much prescription.
it is just nice, sometimes you get to a public hearing, I've shown up for them and you realize that, oh, this is the time when you just get to say what you think about what's gonna go on the ballot, but it's actually too late to provide meaningful input that we can act on. And so just clarifying that we are doing it at a point in the process where it's still possible to act, so that it's meaningful for everyone. I think that of all the things in here, there's a lot that's too prescriptive and I would be okay with getting out, but this part of it, I actually feel good about, making, I don't think that's too prescriptive.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor? Motion carries 5-0. I will say, Audra, that we're gonna count on you to give us our deadlines. To meet this, we're gonna need to know from you when we need to get started on what portions of the budget process.
I do think that without circling back around to this conversation and talking about how you want the budget process to go, and doing that with input from your current budget committee members, it's gonna be, we're gonna get to the point where we're all working on the budget and we get to February and say, oh, okay, time to publish a timeline for the budget review, and it's gonna be the same thing it's always been unless we get some other direction about what everybody else would like to see. So I would like to kind of circle back around to this.
Yeah, sounds
sometime
like
in the
something
year.
we should do before the end of the year then.
Let's put it on the agenda for
Yep.
January or something like this year's
Well,
budget
December.
process. How's it
Go
gonna
for
go?
December. That way we're ready.
Even earlier, the
'Cause we-
earlier the better.
Establish the calendar.
Honestly,
Yeah, no,
I mean,
absolutely, the earlier the better.
the department heads should be thinking about 2025 right now. If they have special projects they want.
Oh, we're all doing
They are.
capital planning right now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Moving on,
Happy Thanksgiving.
item 7. Just moving into discussion items, item 7A.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Did I miss
So,
something?
no, so I'm just wondering, we made a motion to approve 6.5,
No, the whole thing.
no,
yeah, that was
The whole thing was Stephanie's.
no,
Oh, sorry, another.
No,
thing
no,
you
no,
need
I'm
to do
sorry.
is Also, I think maybe Sophie's getting at this. You also need to approve the order to go to.
the order,
to the
and,
notice. for
and we
public hearing.
only voted on 6.5.1, we didn't vote on the other ones.
Well, if you just vote on the order,
We're good, okay.
Can I get a motion to approve the order?
I make a motion that we approve the order.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Sophie. Item 7 tonight, discussion item 7A, is a donation from Ann and David Montgomery, a gift to the town of $200,000 for repair to the Montgomery Dam. Roger, could we get a little background on that?
Yes, so in your packet, there's a letter from the attorneys of the executors of Ann and David Montgomery's estate, where they are offering $200,000 for repairs to the Montgomery Dam, and it specifies the items that they would like the money to be used for in terms of repairs, as well as a time frame for those repairs. But I'm not sure if there's somebody here to speak to that, so if there is, you might want to have them come up for the next part of it.
Please, Mr. Perkins.
It's nice being up by the fan. My name is David Perkins. I'm from Lincolnville. I'm a friend of the Montgomery family. I'm also the attorney. And so the proposal that they are making is a simple one. David Montgomery and Ann Montgomery were longtime residents. David owned the Allen Agency and was one of the first members of the Camden conference. I went to that with her for many years, and Ann just passed away late spring, early summer. And one of the things that she wanted to do was to do something for Camden. So her daughter, who are the personal representative of the estate, Lee Montgomery and Holly Rutland, have decided to make this offer of a gift to the town. And it's very simple, which is they would like to gift from Ann and David $200,000 for maintenance on the Montgomery Dam. As to what the town does for maintenance, we expected you know what you want to do, and we get feedback from you. The things that we noted in the letter were some deferred maintenance on the concrete surface is something that may be addressed. Cleaning up and beautification of the waterfall and the island area that's kind of gotten a bit run down, and the maintenance on the sluice work, gates. But again, these are things that we anticipate that if you want to take this gift, you would talk to the people on your side who know about it and who do come back to us. And the second part of this is we'd like to see the work done within an agreed upon period of time. In the letter, we said this year, but if it couldn't be fit into the lovely weather that we're having, we're flexible as to a bit more time. We understand that there's a large process going on through a committee process on larger issues involving the dam. We don't see this having anything to do with that. It's simply a gift to do some maintenance right now. And the future of the dam is the future of the dam. There may be changes. We're keeping those things totally separate. So that's why we're here. I did speak to Bill Kelly, your attorney, and just to talk about how we would do it if we did it, and there'd probably be a 2-paragraph agreement saying, we're giving you this money. You would tell us what you're going to do with it and when you're going to do it, and that would use that money within that time frame. And if you didn't use it, you give it back and you get the money or something. So that's the proposal, and we appreciate your consideration.
Dave, could you stay there for just a minute, just in case we have any questions? Thank you. Board.
So we, if I may, we talked about it at the Meguntikuk River Citizens Advisory Committee, MERCAC, as we call it amongst ourselves. We talked about it this afternoon. Audra brought it to the attention of the committee. And we had a good discussion about it. And I just want to share with the board what the committee said about the gift. So the first thing that the committee said is that they're not making any recommendations to the select board to either accept or refuse the gift. The second thing they said.
Could you speak up, please?
Oh. So the first thing that the river, can you hear me now? Maybe you want to come forward because
Turn the microphone again closer.
or turn the fan off, yeah. Can you hear me now? I don't think the speakers are on. I don't think the speakers are on.
You can
There are
unplug
speakers if
it,
we
it's a
turn
black plug below you.
Right, so the Megunticook River Citizen Advisory Committee talked about this topic this afternoon because Audra in her manager's report brought it to the attention of the committee. The committee is not making a recommendation to the select board on whether the select board should or should not accept the gift. The committee wants the select board to know that should the select board accept the gift, the committee would be happy to work on recommendations on how to use the funds provided with according to the specific the specs that Mr. Perkins just shared with us. The committee has some concerns on the time frame. In particular, if you're looking at masonry work or concrete work, given it's really hard to find contractors right now, and also it's been a very wet summer, so there's a whole lot of issues. And I think foremost, the committee is concerned not to jeopardize the larger grant by accepting the gift or using the gift to do work that could jeopardize the larger grant. So these are the concerns of the Megunticook Citizen Advisory Committee on the grant, on this gift, so that everybody has the same information. And I have two members here of the committee, so if Ray and Courtney, if I have not represented yourselves, please come forward.
So would it be helpful, because this is all kind of pretty advantageous timing, because a few board members know we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting. Public Works has been doing some maintenance and repairs on the dam, so I think, you know, talking about what's been done recently and what's planned, it's, you know, good timing with, you know, David and Holly here, who are, you know, the ones who are managing this gift. So we could talk about what we've done recently and what's planned in the near future and see if that kind of falls in line with what they're thinking, and, you know, talk about some other options for things that could be done, that, you know, would be, acceptable to everybody who is interested in this site. So we have a little bit of a slideshow just to, you know, because visuals are helpful for when we're talking about something like this. That I think would be helpful for everyone to see. Dave can kind of talk to.
So can everybody hear me? Okay. So Audra, if you could hit the first slide here, I think at the bottom, that's actually a video. Right here, got it pulled up and pull it up from the chair. Okay. So very left, the first slide, the very first screen, yeah, right there, there you go. See the-
Oh,
see-
okay. Yeah.
So here's a photo of the sluice gate open, hidden up in the buildings. This is a good look at how tall
and how much work it's gonna take to remove that posted beam structure and replace that gate. So the second slide, so I want to start with why we were doing this. We were doing this because the opening and closing of the gate, when it's old and rotten, has caused it to wear on the side. And then the boards are so old that when it is open, or when water is being pulled through there because of the gap between the edges where it slides up and down, there's like a 2-inch gap. It's just the door is actually, the gate itself has worn, so it's thin, and the water just goes around it and up and over it, even when it's closed. So that's why it's always leaking. I was told by the harbor master that Ken Bailey would hire the harbor master to go with a scuba gear down and stuff rags into the cracks of this thing so hold water, okay? So that's one of the reasons why it's always leaking. It's old, and the opening and closing of it causes it to deteriorate more quickly. It's made out of wood. It's really not constructed of the proper material for something that you're gonna use in this manner. So what we noticed was we made repairs on this 4 times now. We've completely drained this thing. We've sent people down there. We cut the boards off. We replaced the boards. We put them back on, and it's failed 4 times. This last time was in the middle of summer, and I was sympathetic to the fact that it's time of the year when we have visitors here, and I didn't want to let it up. I wanted to fix it. So I pulled people off of the Pearl Street project, which is going on right now, to go down here and work on this. And when we raised it, and we noticed that the last time we opened it, the 2 bottom boards, which you can see in that circle on the second frame in the middle, were broken, and you can see how one's kicked in. So then the uprights, which hold those boards, were also rotten. So we replaced, you can see on the next slide over, the 2 uprights on that center beam. We replaced one of those slide rails on the bottom on the right and 2 of the boards. With all of that being done and it closed, it still really doesn't hold water. If you look at the sluice gate, it's still, water's flying out the other end pretty good right now. So I'd say about a month ago, I do daily inspections on this, and when I saw that it was leaking out the sluice gate, I figured there was something wrong with the gate again, and I made a note in the app that everybody can access whenever they want and look at, see the daily inspection. And I had a contractor 2 days later come over and take a look at it, and at that point, I talked to the town manager. We came up with a design, and we're fabricating an aluminum door that would be plated on both sides with 2 aluminum rails and a type of, it's not Teflon, but it's a type of material that goes on the inside of it, so it'll slide up and down more easily. And then it'll be affixed to a new post, which you saw in the first video that goes all the way up, because the post is bent in and twisted with the pressure of the water load being on that. So all the hardware will have to be taken off of that and put on a new post. It'll have to be routed out so it actually accepts and all the hardware, and then that new gate will have to be affixed to that post. At that point, then we'll put a seal on the bottom so it actually holds water. That's going to be a big job. I think, you know, if we're talking about uses of money to help maintain the sluice gate, we could hire a contractor to do this. This is like more work than I really have time to do, to be honest with you. I've already got the process in motion of building the gate, but this is probably a good use of the funds to pay a contractor to replace this and the rails. We'll have to do a permit by rule on this to do that work down in there. So that's the gate portion, okay? Maybe go to the next slide, Audrey. So you can see on the left slide here how the spillway is pretty deteriorated, and while we knew we were working on this gate and we we're going to have it drained, I wanted to just do a little bit of more work on the top of that, just to kind of keep it together at this point. It's just light maintenance. So we did that. You can go to the next slide.
Can you put it into full screen mode?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So you can see here, you know, we moved a couple pieces of granite over on the end, and we did a little bit of cobble work and some light mortar work, less than 3 inches on the other end. And now that, you know, that spillway is pretty much holding water all the way across, and if anybody's seen it recently, it's actually falling over. And I think it looks pretty good for the amount of effort we put into this. So you can go to the next slide over. Let's look from the inside. Also, you know, it shows the cleanup work that was done around it. Next slide, probably. Yeah. This is a photo of probably a good use of the funds would be to do some dredging or cleaning up of this area in the bottom. Okay. This impoundment area holds mud. Everybody dislikes the way it looks when it's drained. When you open the gate, the mud gets washed down into the harbor. There's all kinds of debris that's collected under this area right here that you can see. There's an oil tank where those boards are sticking out. There's all kinds of sharp objects, metal, bike tires, rims, shopping carts, you name it, are down there. This needs to be cleaned out, and this debris is contributing to the failure and the difficulty with the gate. So I think that, you know, I work with Clean Harbors and other environmental companies. They'll come in, and I'm sure we have to get a permit to do this, but you know, you could take a Cusco or a vac truck and you could vac excavate out this so that it's actually down to the ledge, and it doesn't look so like atrocious when it's empty. Because the reality is, it's going to be empty over and over. Main Water looked at their water line that's running under the bridge, and that water line's ready to fail, and they're going to have to do some major work on that. So that'll create some downtime where this thing has to be open again. The building owners are always asking for this to be open and closed to do maintenance on the buildings. And then the fact that MDOT is going to be replacing the One Bridge is going to also create a situation where this thing is going to be exposed all the time. So I think it's in our best interest that we clean this out and prepare it to be emptied at times so it doesn't look so bad. Make the gate so it's functional, so we can close it and open it without any problems. Maybe the next slide. And then with some long-term planning, you know, if it's in the cards to redo the spillway and the reporting of the actual dam itself, that's also some things that could be done. You know, I'm kind of hesitant. I'm doing a lot of work on that until we hear something from the advisory committee on what direction they're going to go there. That's my input. I mean, I'm not the authority on this. You guys make the decision of what you want, but that would be how I would use those funds to improve this situation. I think that's a reasonable approach. And I think that for now it looks pretty good. I don't think it's going to hold water. I think that gate's going to fail again. I don't know when it's going to fail again, but it probably will, because it's pretty bad shape. You can see how tough shape that is at this point. So that's all I have to say, really.
All right, so we thought we would lay that out because, you know, we hadn't had a chance to talk about that pretty comprehensively, you know, in terms of what was in process already.
Board, any comments, questions?
Well, how do you, Mr. Perkins, how do you feel about, how do you think the family would feel about using those funds for doing the dredging work, even though the letter stipulated island wall and sluice gate? Would they be amenable to?
Yeah, is there any plan on?
Holly, could you come up, introduce yourself? It's just because we have people watching on YouTube and Zoom.
Yeah, Holly Rutland, and part of the Montgomery family, and I just was curious if there was any plan on cleanup on the islands of the waterfall.
We could certainly do that. To, you know, landscaping of the island area.
So with the work that you've already started, what do you have budgeted for work to date that you've done?
Do you know what the costs are? I mean, a lot of it has been public
Labor.
works, labor.
It's a lot of labor. It's what we spent our time on. We spent pretty much all last week on fixing that up. And-
Dave,
I'm sorry.
If you could grab a microphone, even temporarily.
So a lot of it is the labor that we spent with the people down there doing the work we did. And then the other costs are going to be the fabrication of the gate, and then probably hiring a contractor to install it. And then if you decide to clean that up, the bottom, that would be a contractor to do that. Probably like a clean.
So you guys have the gate already, is it being fabricated now?
Yeah, I had talked to Roger some time ago. When I first saw that the gate was failing, I mean, I'm just wasting so much time going down and fixing those on the old rotten wood gate. So I decided to have a contractor look at it when it failed for the third or fourth time and have them fabricate an aluminum one that'll be sealed. And then that'll be affixed in the Seuss gate.
So you have monies budgeted for that.
They put money aside in the budget this year to do some work on that. We had money budgeted in Montgomery Dam portion of the budget. But we didn't plan on replacing the gate. That wasn't something that we had.
What was the amount of what's been budgeted?
$30,000.
And what was the estimate for the gate pass?
I'm gonna guess it's gonna be right around $15,000 to $20,000 to do the work on the gate, the fabrication of the gate. And I haven't asked anybody to give me a quote on installing it. I mean, that'd probably be.
Can you guys get estimates for the work that you've laid out to us? And so that we know what the work that you've talked about, what the cost of that would be?
So are we talking about the gate, the installation of the gate? Clean up of the area down below and clean up of the island? Yeah, we can do those.
Yes, if we could get estimates on all of that work.
Yep.
And then we would know what our gift.
Yep.
Permitting.
In the permitting, yeah.
Permitting.
Go ahead, Sophie. Then.
Sorry, I'll give you also in the estimate, the time frame, because just to make sure, I mean, an estimate, a guesstimate, how long
Yeah,
this should
that's
take and
whatever.
when we can start, it could be
I mean,
useful as well.
The gate is supposed to be done by the end of this month. And I was hoping somehow I could find somebody to help me put that in, but I mean, I don't know yet. I don't know what the installation is.
Thanks, Dave. Allison?
One of the things while Holly's right there, one thing that I've seen in some of the older articles and some of the old files in the town is that it looked like there were letters, from David and Ann, or one or the other, combination over many years, saying that they were gonna do like the cleanup of, I think they called it the cleanup of the island, or pruning or trimming, and they, I think the way it was working, Robert Moody was saying, yes, that'll be fine, you can have your contractor go and do that. And it looked like that was something that was done maybe for many years as just an offering from your family.
No, you're talking about the lot that's below our buildings.
Lee, I'm sorry, you do have to speak into the microphone.
I wanted to show you what and see what you thought of it, but I think that sometimes, with that center island, it's like this no man's land where people don't necessarily know who has authority, and Parks and Rec or whoever else is like, I don't know if we should cut anything down or not, and then the beaver comes along every so often and takes care of some things, and some people like it one way, some people like it another. It does feel when you're standing out there that if the view were cleared out a little bit more to the harbor, that would be nicer, but nobody wants to upset anybody with doing that the wrong way. Do you guys have a vision for what you mean by cleaning up the island, or what would look nicer? Or
Well, I'll just go back to what you said about a letter from David Ann Montgomery, because if you saw any correspondence with the town from David Ann Montgomery, it would have been on a different piece of property. It would have been the exchange that they had with the town for the parking area down where the popcorn stand was going.
you guys know what would look good there, and what was done in the past, and what
A lot, anything would look better.
pruning, you mean pruning of the tree.
Yeah, cleanup of it. It just, anything would be an improvement.
And then accessing that area, I'm wondering, like, it obviously depends on how much water is coming over the spillway, how easy it is to get to the middle, and who would do that, and
Yeah.
So,
it is hard sometimes to get there, you can.
No, I'm saying that's not Holly's purview.
Probably, yeah.
So, we don't need to take up your time tonight about the details about how to do this. What we want to find out is whether you were inclined to go down this road. If you are, then we could work with the town manager or the people who really know how to do this, to meet with them and to get into the details, and then, you know, we can, we can work together. But, if you are, then we could work with the town manager or the people who really know how to do this to meet with them and to get into the details, and then, you know, we can work together. And then, you can figure out your process. Oh, we can do it tonight if you want, but,
So I guess, thank you, David. I mean, it sounds like, Polly and we are, interested in some of the, different, activities that Dave was talking about. So if that's something that's of interest to the board, we can move forward on that.
So before we do that, do we know the implication with the grant, or would that be considered like a match, or
You know,
is
that's
there
the match, no, the match is a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think, I'm very confident that everything that we talked about tonight
would
is
not?
nothing that's going to put the project that we currently have going in jeopardy. So I think we can all feel good about that. But I honestly don't know about the match question.
If we wanted to expand it differently and use the money differently, let's say pointing of the rock wall with the water coming through and things like that. At what point does it put the project in jeopardy?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's really, they would need a level of specificity that I don't think that we can, to answer that question. Like if we were to go to, one of our grant administrators and ask them, I just don't think I don't think we know the answer to that. And I don't think they're gonna be able to tell us the answer because it's something that, would really have to be pretty well spelled out to them.
Yeah, I just want to put it under the scope of we have no idea how long the river project is going to go. We have no idea how long it's going to take to have a design or even a direction to go. And this money, this gift and the other gift that I was hoping would be on this as well, would go a long way in preserving an asset to the town that was a generous gift. And this is such a generous gift that I feel like it needs to be honored in a significant way of making that area a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, which in reading the letter, that is what I took from it. Yes, dredging is important. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm also thinking if we go down and look at the rock wall, the pointing that needs to be done on that, or those rocks are going to be displaced, it's going to be a huge issue. When we first started talking about the river project and anything that happens on the river, I believe the first time frame that I heard was like 10 or 12 years. So this would go a great long way in preserving that rock wall and the gate and all of that to be more aesthetically pleasing and not be a tax burden on the taxpayers.
What's the rock wall? Just so I know what the rock wall is. Is that the dam of the spillway?
Where the sleuthway comes out and
Okay,
comes against.
there's a lot of work there.
Yeah.
They did repoint that and
Yeah,
you wouldn't be able to get anybody to do it right now anyway. That's the thing. I mean, we contracted, Knowles has been building over here and they weren't even available because of the weather, and they work on large dam projects and they're behind because of how much rain we've had all this year. So he said realistically, he wouldn't even come down and do the work. So, I mean, there was a timeline on the repairs of repointing. We're almost out of the season to start trying to do repointing. We're gonna be in the wet weather at this time of year. So realistically, that's why I didn't even talk about that piece of it. It's really not something you can achieve right now. That has to be planned out. The other things we could do. That's just like one of the reasons why I said what I said.
So the basis for our gift is to, like, Stephanie said, the aesthetically and the workings of specifically the dam of deferred maintenance that hasn't happened. That's the most important thing. I think the dredging,
That's lower on our list because I think that the town has a responsibility as to part of this. And that's something that the town can take on. I think with the estimates on all of the things that need to be done, we would have a better idea on what our gift covered. If they're, you know, as to what the priorities are, but you definitely got the right feeling from our gift. So thanks.
And the timeframe could accommodate what you just said. If it has to be next season, that's okay. We just want we want to be sure it happens.
And if you want to put a deadline on it, I mean, we understand the weather and the winter and the rain and all that. We understand that. We just want to, in our agreement with you, to have a deadline that we all agree on that's feasible, just so that, that it happens.
So, I mean, realistically, you can't, we're not gonna be able to repoint this year. That's not a realistic thing to do. And when we do these things, we put them out to bid generally, and there's, it's a process, and it wouldn't be until next year when we would even look at doing this, realistically, if the contractor can do it. That's what the board approves it, so
Our biggest thing is that the project goes forward and that there's a guideline that we all agree on, and we're all on the same page with what our end result is. And we feel that there's been deferred maintenance in the past, and we wanting to make it a beautiful place for the town of Camden.
I'm gonna open this to the public, but before I do, we'll come back to the board. Board will get last comments. I'm gonna just remind everybody that if the board does elect to accept this gift, we're gonna leave it to the Montgomery family and the town manager to come up with a priorities list for the dam. And I, for one, feel confident that they will be able to come to some kind of consensus about, what those things are. I've worked with both parties, and I'm quite confident that they will. So the specifics of it, I think, are something that I'd like to say that we have I feel a good deal of confidence in.
I would like the Megantic Rivers and advisory committee to be into conversation somehow, a little bit, Sorry, I'm saying, I think it would be, from a process and perspective, I think it would be nice to have the river committee.
No.
Okay, is there anybody from the public who would like to speak? Please.
Resident of Camden, and first of all, I want to thank them, this is so generous. And I'm just kind of curious why work was done last week. All of a sudden, in the last 5 years, there's been absolutely nothing, no maintenance whatsoever done, but I'm very grateful that it's been done. I've seen, the comments and the positive input that we've gotten with how the aesthetics look right now. And I think that repairing the south wall was really important because it held the water in the mill pond, but the gate is very important. And once we get that gate fixed, the water will flow over the wall, and it'll look beautiful for a while, because I know it's going to take many, many years for you guys to come up with a plan, which we haven't a plan right now. And Montgomery's, they have a plan to preserve the waterfall. And it's just such a benefit for our community. And like I said, just within a week's time, I've seen so many visitors that are so appreciative, and the photos that are taken, and the weddings and so forth. And that's been missing for at least 5 years, because there's been no maintenance whatsoever. And that part, I don't know why. I don't know why there hasn't been any maintenance done. I don't know what the plan is. But I'm grateful for this. So thank you. And I do, is there a time, you said there's a month timeline on that gate?
yeah, but the installation, I don't know about the installation.
So I see that as a liability issue for the town, because what I have seen, especially the last few years, is that gate just being open all the time. And you had photos,
I have not opened that gate unless I was requested.
it's always leaking, it's always leaking.
I agree.
I look out my window every day.
I know that, I'm not opening yet.
Yeah, it's broken.
Yeah.
It seems to be a priority right now for the town. To me, you know, it's a liability for the town. The child, I see it all the time, there's families playing in that mill pond area. If they ever got sucked up into that chute, you know, or an animal, a dog and so forth. So I think there's an urgency there to get that gate fixed. And aesthetically, once that gate is fixed,
Are you saying people are swimming in the mill pond?
I've seen, children playing in that, right where that gate is.
I'm talking about the reason why that should be cleaned up.
I'd be happy to send you photos, I have respect
Sure,
for
but I
the
guess,
families
I
that
guess
cannot do that.
if that's really going on, then
Yeah,
I
I
think we
sent
need
you
to talk
emails
about like
over the last few
fencing.
years.
I guess, but my point is, that's a bigger problem. It's not the people just getting sucked into the sluiceway. They shouldn't be swimming or playing in that water. And I guess if that's
So when
happening
that water is
incredibly
flowing,
regularly, my point is maybe we need to talk about putting up some sort of fencing or something to
There
keep people
wouldn't
from
be a
going
need
up
for
there
that.
and climbing on it.
there would not be a need for that if the water flowed over the sluice, the walls.
I feel like that is
It's
very
People
dangerous.
walking out there with the water flowing over.
It's a deterrent, it's a deterrent.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Well,
Anybody else from the public? Tony, you should come up, please.
Thank you, I'm Tony Grassi, 363 Belfast Road. And first thing, it would be appropriate to acknowledge the generosity of the Lecker family to provide funds to the town to do maintenance on the dam. But I have some concerns, and those essentially are, first you set up a McCarthy River Citizen Advisory Committee at the with both the people who want to maintain the dam as it is, as well as those that are interested in restoring the river, in agreement that that was the right way to tackle the subject. And I'm concerned that that you're in this process, that you're sort of reinserting the select board into the discussion about what should happen to the river. Soup to nuts, and the fact that when Sophie suggested that the River Advisory Committee be involved in this discussion, you got sort of a, oh no, that's a bad idea. I don't understand that. Those were the people that you appointed for this purpose, and so to sort of side run the committee, I think is a mistake. And my biggest concern, I guess, is that one, you've got a resolution that no significant work will be done on the dam without voter approval. And so the question is sort of what significant work, what's the intention of that? The Save the Dam group advocated vociferously for that. And so I think sort of spending money on the dam without sort of thinking about how it fits with that resolution that the select board passed. Now you can, this is a new select board, you can throw out the old resolution anytime you want, but you need to sort of step up and do that if that's in fact what you want to do. Because I think the voters, of which our Reform Democrat group represents over 530 voters who want to see the river study work done and want a comprehensive solution. And so I think you got to be careful in accepting this gift and the way it's spent, that you don't do anything that will affect the ability of the committee to do its work on the river. And Stephanie, you talked about 10 to 12 years. It's a 10 to 12 year process from day one to the last work on the last dam is done. It's not that the Montgomery Dam is gonna sit there for 10 to 12 years and not get any attention. That's, that's just not the way the system will work. Interfood will come up with a schedule of which dams ought to be addressed in what order and so on and so forth. So 10 to 12 years.
Or if they will,
Excuse me?
or if they will though, as well.
If they will.
Correct.
Yeah.
If they
They're
will.
gonna, Interflu is gonna come up with a series of alternatives for all of the dams and it's gonna present it to, along with the committee, and eventually the committee will make a recommendation to the board. And I'm just suggesting that it would be disingenuous, if not completely unethical, to spend the Montgomery's generous gift and then turn around next year or 2 years from now, and say, well, that was kind of all a waste of money because we're gonna do something different. So I think you've got this, it's a bit of a dilemma. If you can figure out ways to spend the money that wouldn't be disingenuous to them, and, funds that would not put potentially federal grants in jeopardy, if you can figure out a way to do that, and I think that the River Advisory Committee is in place to figure that out, then I think you would be in, that would be fabulous, and that would be a great solution, but I don't, I can imagine what's gonna happen is 2 years from now or a year from now, the argument's gonna be made, well, we just spent all this money fixing the dam, so why change it? And
You didn't.
No, please, no. If you have something to say, you can say it
Okay.
and I'll call you up.
And I'd be happy to share with you the money I have spent on this subject anytime you'd like. So it just seems to me that you want to be super careful here in not jeopardizing federal funding, because if you do, then the Camden taxpayer is going to pay the bill for anything else that happens in the river. So I think it's a fabulous opportunity, but be really careful in how you design what you're gonna spend the money on and how effectively it can be put to work to satisfy the objectives of the sort of the near term, the extent to which you can do near term work that improve the appearance of the dam and the way the water flows, so on and so forth. That's all great, so long as you don't then say, well, now we fixed it, so we can't change it.
Thank you, Tony.
And the only other thing is Stephanie mentioned another gift, so I wonder what I just wondered what that reference was to.
Well,
That the other gift would also be.
We had an almost $12,000 donation that we haven't made a resolution on as well.
The same for the young.
No, the earlier,
Correct.
not a new gift, that was the proposed. Past $11,000, whatever.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? I'm just 1 second, please. Okay, musical chairs.
Ron Hawkins, resident of Camden. Tom touched on it briefly, the irony of the coincidence that the decision was made to spend money on the dam just prior to this donation. That irony is not lost on me, and I don't think it's lost on anyone here. And we have to wonder why it is that Dan and a good number of business owners and concerned citizens in town were basically begging for there to be work done on the dam, and could not persuade any motion to be taken whatsoever. No motion was made for a period of 4 to 5 years. Now, suddenly, when this money is available, boom, it's done.
I don't appreciate the conspiracy theorizing. I just want to say, we had money budgeted this year by the budget. I'm just saying, we had $30,000 budgeted to do work on it. The public works director was very clear about the fact that he had continually had to go down and repair that gate. And it was getting to the point where we couldn't rehab it anymore. So that's why the money was spent. So there's nothing behind it. It had nothing, it just happened that was already in process before anybody even knew about this gift. So I just want to answer that because it's come up twice. And I feel like it's a little bit unfair, given that there was already an explanation given about why it happened, when it happened.
You can, just so you can look at the timeline of the app that I told you that anybody can look at any day of the week. And that decision was documented in that before I didn't know anything.
And anyone in here can look at the timeline of the months that went by trying to get the gift that the David and Paul group was trying to put on the select board agenda. We couldn't get it on the agenda.
Yeah, but I mean,
We
we're
can look
talking,
at that time.
we're talking.
You can also look
We're
at-
just
Right,
trying to talk
let
about
me
from a
finish.
very operational perspective
I
about
won't
why.
stand here and be interrupted.
Sure. Yeah, Ron, go ahead and finish, and then we'll
Yeah.
respond.
We could also look at the timeline where the town voted to allocate $50,000 for the restoration of the Montgomery Dam. We could look at that timeline and how that was ignored. The voting public has already made themselves clear regarding this issue, and that was 10 years ago. There's a lot, and we don't really even know where that money went at this point. We've heard a lot of stories about where that money went, but it didn't go into the Montgomery Dam.
The Seabright, it went into the Seabright, yeah,
Okay, the town wanted to put it into the Montgomery.
and the Seabright.
Can I
Go ahead.
I mean, listen, I've been doing this for less than a year, so I don't think it's fair to judge my performance and what I've done on that dam with everything else. So I just want to say that because this bothers me personally. And then the other thing is, if you go and look at the app that I've told you, you'll clearly see that when I documented it was leaking, was the day, and then a day later, I documented that I contacted a contractor and had them look at that. This was before any of this stuff had happened. So, I mean, let's just for the record.
We'll just call it.
Can, I mean.
All right, Rick,
I'd
I'm
like-
gonna take right now. So we're off track. Okay, we're
I'd like
talking,
to be positive and forward looking. We're trying to thread a needle here. We understand you want some maintenance and we're trying to deliver maintenance that isn't going to jeopardize any sort of long-term planning that the town is also committed to. And I understand you don't agree with that. You don't like that project, but the reality is we're in the middle of it. So we're trying to do both things at once. And I know that, you know, everyone's a little unhappy with what we're doing because it's a really difficult needle to thread, but we are trying really hard to do both things so that we're maintaining the dam as best we can, given that there might be some big changes coming to it in the future. And I understand that that isn't satisfying to everyone, but we are genuinely doing the best we can, given the direction that we've been given. So I just want to say that that's kind of where people like Dave and I are at in all of this. And I know that you can talk about what you do agree with and don't agree with in terms of what the select board did, but from a very operational perspective, we are really trying to do both things.
Not holding this select. board.
I'm just saying, whatever decisions were made in the past, that's where we're at now, and we're trying to be forward-looking and do things that are going to, you know, work for the greatest amount of people right now, given the direction that we've been given.
And I don't
Yeah,
know what happened.
what I want to happen is I want to focus on the Montgomery family gift. So Ron, if you have anything more substantive about that,
I
let's
think it's
do that.
really important that we not lose track of what the intent is of this gift. And I don't think it's appropriate to spend money on dredging. I think that the intent was that the dam be preserved. And I think the intent was that if the sluice gate needs to be replaced, then let's replace the sluice gate. And let's do it in such a way that it will last 150 years without having to have any maintenance. And that's possible. Because I've been at this a long time too. It's entirely possible that we can build an aluminum gate with Teflon pads that will allow that gate to go up and down pretty much effortlessly for a long time to come. If it's engineered properly and we take the proper approach, and it isn't going to cost an arm and a leg, and there should be money left over to redo the work that was just recently done on the dam and do a proper job of it.
Thanks,
Thank
Ron.
you.
Please.
Roger Aikley, town of Camden. I just want to compliment the town board because we're having a kind of exchange here that we had wished we'd had over the last few years. It can be a little rough sometimes, but it's good to have the public and town board to be able to discuss ideas back and forth. I've had a chance to be with the committee, the McGonagall committee, on 2 or 3 occasions recently. And I've been very impressed with their curiosity, their knowledge, their questioning, their even-handedness. And I'm looking forward to their continuing work. I think they've been doing a good job, and I feel confident. And as Sophie mentioned today, they've been very neutral. They want to be neutral in all of this. And I think we all should be that way. And it seems to me in accepting the very generous gift by the Montgomerys doesn't jeopardize that neutrality at all. It's all good, everything about it, the generosity, the thought behind it, the benefits that we get as town members. And so I look forward to, I'm hoping this could be an occasion where the town board could make an acceptance of that gift, pending an agreement on what the scope of work would be over the next coming weeks. And along with that, the $11,500 that was offered earlier as a possibility to even enlarge what good can come out of these grants. So I applaud you for listening to us, listening to all sides, and my hope is that you do accept this grant today, and you can work out. We can figure out a way to work out the details later.
Thank you, Roger. Please.
Stephanie Smith, Washington Street, and I live across from the river. And I think the one thing we've all heard is the vitriol that's gone back and forth about the dam. And the intention that I understood was that the Citizens Advisory Committee, as Roger said, is to neutralize that and help everybody in the town be able to have a voice. And so on this particular gift, it is very generous. And I think, Audra, what you said is threading this needle so that we don't close off any side for the future for the river. Because it then does seem as though why did we have a Citizens Advisory Committee if work is done on the dam such that it blocks the rest of the project? Because we all know that's a pivotal dam for the rest of the river. And the only other suggestion I'd make, having been on a public board when we have a heated issue, it's nice if you give a limit to the people that come up here and you don't have the back and forth and interruption on either side, whether interrupting me speaking or us interrupting you, because we have to respect each other and listen to each other. So that's my second message. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Please.
Bernice Berger, Camden. A point to be made is, if this gift is not accepted and not used, the Montgomery Dam will just deteriorate to a point of not being able to repair it, should the grant or the advisory board come to a conclusion that we're not going to destroy the dam. We don't know that yet. So let's use the gift. Let's maintain it, even if it's temporary. I hope, if that's what it comes to, that you folks can live with that. It could happen. So I implore you to accept this generous gift. And let's just keep the doors open rather than close the door and not have a dam at all.
Thanks, Bernice. Anyone else? please.
My name's Randy Stearns. I've been resident of Camden for almost 40 years. Grew up in Lincolnville, born in Camden, schooled in Camden, served many committees for the town of Camden and in the town of Camden. All the wonderful stuff. Montgomery family is phenomenal. I'll just say, I went to school with them. I knew Sarah very well, miss her dearly. This is phenomenal, yeah. Camden has a great opportunity. Everybody has their plans. I have not heard one person talk about safety of the dam. There have been videos complaining of public people and public works people having to fight to open and close that sluiceway and the dangers they face. Nobody's talking about safety of the dam or the townspeople. I think that should be #1 concern of everybody. But for some reason, safety is being overlooked. I love the fact that fixing up to the aesthetics and everything else, but let's get down to the brass tacks. Somebody falls into that pool when the sluiceway is open. I work for a funeral home. I don't want to come down the harbor and pick up the pieces. They're not going to come out the end of that sluiceway the same way they went in. Kids shouldn't be in there playing. I'm not doubting the pictures, but we need to think a little bit about safety around this dam. And I think that should be your #1 priority.
Thank you, Randy. Please.
Camden resident. I just don't want us to lose sight of what topic we're on. We are accepting the generosity of people who have been in this community for generations. And if it was my family that did this, if it was your family, if it was anybody else's family, wouldn't we want to accept something that is left in their family's name? They've already been so generous in giving us the dam and the waterfall. And now, because of, I'm going to use the word neglect. Everybody else has been very kind and said deferred and whatnot, but I'm going to use, this dam has been neglected. There has been no contractual work since 2009. I don't know why. I know when some things changed in 2017, I know some went to Seabright. But my point is, we should all be so very grateful. And I believe that Sophie said that the committee wants hands off this decision. They want hands off this decision. This decision is to be made by the select board about accepting this gift, not about how it's going to be done afterwards. That's between whatever is worked out with the attorney and Audra and contractors. And of course, the Montgomery family. So that's what I want to say. And I hope that you'll all think about what's in their hearts and all that they've done for this town. And I don't want to get misty-eyed because I will, because I think about it was my family, I would just be so upset with the town. They gave something and then the town neglected it. And now they want to help again. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jean. Please.
Can I just correct the record that I didn't say this? I'm sorry.
Come on up, Robin, then, so while Sophie's speaking.
Yeah, my proposal was to find a way so that the Meguntic River Advisory Committee would be involved in the proposal at some level. I think it deserves to be. So I was not being hands on.
I'm Rob Wasserstrom. I live at 36 Mountain Street. I'd like to read a bit of something that I decided after Tony talked. We didn't even read.
But I think there's a couple of misperceptions that should be corrected tonight. I'm here on behalf of, excuse me, Restore Lagoon Cook, the group, advocacy group, and the more than 530 Camden residents who signed our petition in February and March 2022. The petition asked if they wanted to, quote, improve river water quality, reduce flood risk, and facilitate fish passage in the mouth of the river. Excuse me. Even if that means removing the Montgomery Dam. We collected 530 signatures in 3 weeks in the middle of the winter. As you know, Save the Dam Falls, our organization represented over here, circulated a petition about the Montgomery Dam, and in 4.5 months, they reportedly collected around 500 signatures. In other words, a majority of Camden residents who signed the petitions, a majority of Camden voters who signed the petitions, said they want to reduce flood risk and facilitate fish passage, whether the dam is preserved or not. They also told us that they wanted more information before they vote on any plan. So this petition, not some of the opinions you've heard tonight, seems to represent the majority of voters, at least as they've expressed their will. On many occasions, the select board has promised that it wouldn't take any major actions on the dam or watershed without approval from Camden voters. As Tony just pointed out, accepting the Montgomery request, generous as it is a major action that potentially jeopardizes our future federal grants. And ultimately, it's something that the voters should decide and not just the select board by itself. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rob.
The petition is available upstairs at the clerk's office.
Anybody else? Back to the board, or any more thoughts, comments, discussion? Allison?
One thing I'd really like to see on the agenda sometime soon is an updating of the policy regarding the opening and closing of the Montgomery Dam gate. The unfortunate fact is that the visual effect that I think everybody can agree is the most desirable is only available when the gate can be closed, or when there's so much water coming down that it fills it up, no matter what. The opening of the sluice gate, I've come to agree with Ron Hawkins, who would say, he used to say, that shouldn't be open, that shouldn't be open. And I didn't agree at that time. I've watched more and more, and yeah, it's a last resort by request that we ever have to open that gate. It's not a good thing. The people in the harbor complain. There are all kinds of reasons why that's a bad system. The fact is, though, that there are at least 7 properties that have a historical record of needing to ask for that gate to be opened, not even about flooding, but just because of needing to do maintenance. And it's a by request system. So one property owner wants it opened in order to do maintenance, and it might be, it's almost always the same time of year where we have lots of people here. So we have a system that relies on draining a pool and creates an aesthetic effect that everybody agrees looks terrible. We have an opportunity here to get the only reason that we need to open the gate is to be able to allow MDOT to work on the bridge. There are several building owners to work on their buildings, and for the town to be able to assess stormwater issues, for main water to be able to do things. If right now, we can put all the money we want into making that dam look perfect and operate perfectly. But if the main water company or MDOT or the Smiling Cow or any of these buildings needs work to be done, and you can see some of those buildings are very clearly going to need work to be done. That's just a fact. We are going to be in a situation where we have to decide how long is it okay to leave that gate open for, even it looks terrible. So this period in time is an opportunity where there is so much federal money available to help building owners create a situation where we wouldn't have to access the buildings from underneath. They wouldn't have to look terrible. We could figure out, we could use federal money to make it, so hopefully we never would have to open that gate again. We could all agree on what the water level should be and let it overflow. And it's an opportunity to do that. When Phil Montgomery donated the dam, he wrote a letter to the town. It started with him identifying a cost and a liability. He asked the town first for help with repairing the gate. He said he hadn't repaired the gate. He identified the 3 or 4 buildings that were at risk of flooding. He said if he just removed the gate, it would eliminate the town's aesthetic attraction, which is, you know, it's the conundrum that it depends on something being flooded that also has to be drained. So I would just, everything I heard tonight from the Montgomery family and from their attorney, I felt like that could be a very sort of consistent compromise with doing some long-term planning on a possible solution and also making it look nicer in the interim. But I'm worried about some of the other comments and the implication of we're doing something to last forever. What happens if we do all this and then next summer it needs to be drained the entire time because of work being done on the buildings? And not all of the building owners are being, maybe they're not aware or they're not being honest about how often they have had to request that be open. And so I would just like to do something to make it look better. That oil tank is on private property. A lot of the debris and stuff is on private property. The town could take or the state could take the path of going after those individual property owners and trying to force them to clean up these things. Or we could all try to work together and use federal money to clean it up so it looks better for everybody. So that's my.
Anybody else?
Well, I think it's important whenever you have something to go ahead and maintain it. And I understand with the Citizens Advisory Group, actually what they had said, and I think this is the point she was trying to clarify, was that the McGonagall Citizens Advisory Group wanted to be neutral on accepting or not the donation. That was what it was, that's what she meant. It was that piece about being neutral on it, on accepting or not. And yes, they would like involvement on what gets done because they've got a broad committee of people. But when it comes to, we've got an opportunity. We know it's going to be a while until something is done holistically on the river. In the meanwhile, and I don't think that, tell me if I'm wrong, but you didn't say, shoot, use the money to fix it, make things better and never do anything to it again. And I don't think that we would go with the intention of saying, oh, now we finally have a long-term plan and we're not going to come back and say, oh, shoot, but last year we spent, X amount of dollars. Right. Here's the silly story. It's like my old Toyota that has 280,000 miles, right? It's got rust in the bumper. And I sold my wife's Honda CRV. And she's saying, I'm gonna have to drive that to school. And I said, well, I guess I can't really get another car for you right now. So I'll at least paint the bumper and make it look better. That's kind of what we're doing here. It's not like we're not gonna get the car down the road. Same thing here. We need to go ahead. We've got an opportunity to make a good short-term fix. As Allison said, sometimes the gate has to be, raised and lowered frequently. Well, you might have to make a good gate then that you can raise and lower frequently. And, with the piece that Dave had mentioned with the aluminum gate and Teflon, sounds like what Ron was talking about. Something that is easy and works. And Randy, to your point that you'd mentioned about safety, that was actually something that Dave and I spoke about a couple weeks ago in a meeting, and even briefly before this meeting about making it safe for the town employees to go ahead and operate basically the high lift jack system that it is. So I think it's pretty easy as long as it doesn't, certainly we don't want to jeopardize anything further holistic going down the road. We don't want to do that. And as long as, and Audra mentioned earlier, she does not feel that doing the short-term fixes, of which the town manager already wanted to do, wouldn't jeopardize the bigger project. So it's the, cliched win-win. We have an opportunity. We've got a decent idea on a gate. Ron has a good idea on a gate. Let's get someone, if we can, if it helps, get it done faster, to hire a contractor to go ahead and do it, to do the install, great. Have it worked out between Montgomery's, the town manager, on how, what the list is, what the estimates are. I'd like to know how soon can we get those estimates for those pricing, so we can get on it and get it done quickly and have it be within the time frame of their intent, even if it can't meet the letter of the law of saying, 2023. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. I would say that we, like Chris said, we're in a win-win situation. I think that the Montgomery family has made a very generous offer, and I think that the board should accept this offer with the idea that Montgomery's are coming at it with the interest of maintaining the dam, doing some maintenance on the dam, and the town manager is going to preserve the town's ability to have the river committee make some good recommendations in the future for us, and the possibility for some federal funds. I think we can achieve both here.
Yes, and just so I'm clear on the direction going away, so Dave and I are gonna go away, and based on the items that we talked about, we're gonna get quotes and timeframes as to when the work can be done. I'll touch base with David, Lee, and Holly about exactly what that looks like, and then we can bring that back to the board for action.
It's acceptable to me.
I would like to make a motion that we accept the generous donation from the Montgomery family of the $200,000 based on what Audra just said.
Allison?
So everything's, I would prefer, since this was listed as a discussion item and we don't have the details. Everything that I'm hearing sounds fine, but I would like it to be written up. This is what happens if we don't spend the money. This is what, because the town has been in situations before where you don't want to accept money without a plan for what you're doing and what the guidelines are going to be. So, for the same reason that you want to read everything first, that, the people were complaining about the letter, and there wasn't even a letter in the packet until this week. So I would just like to see for whoever is appropriate, write something up, really just exactly as the Montgomery's attorney outlined, that this is a conversation. The next step would be writing up a couple paragraphs about how this will all go, and then we could do a formal vote.
I agree. I agree. I think it's good practice. I'm also concerned with the resolution the board took about not doing major work. So how do we reconcile those two things?
I mean, we won't do major work. It's not, that's sort of what Audra's saying. That's Audra's job to manage that within the lines.
I'm trying to.
You're trying
to keep you away from,
okay,
going against your own resolution.
thank you.
There is a difference between asking taxpayers to fund something and accepting an offer from an outside, from a private individual. So I do think it's a little bit.
Well, I think, like most things in life, is compromising is essential. I do want the Montgomery family to know that I am thankful for your generous gift. I know I didn't say that earlier on, but I am, because it's gonna help us, and I think it's very appreciated. But I just want to make sure we don't lose that federal funding. To me, that's really, really critical.
So we have a motion. Would anybody like to amend the motion or second the motion?
I'll second the motion. The motion that made by Stephanie.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? This is to accept the gift. All those in favor? Two opposed? I'm gonna make a motion that we ask the town manager and the attorney for the Montgomery family to get together and give us some more specifics on what would be the agreed upon work for this dam, and then bring it back before the board.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? 5-0, motion carries. Thank you. We are now at almost 10 p.m. What do we want to do with this?
Well, we have something to do with piers. We have to address the piers.
I don't think there was any action required on that, was there? Okay, it was just to review it. I just was hoping to see the language for the moratorium. You're gonna do that at the same time, but
That's fine. We can do the piers.
I don't think it's in there. There wasn't moratorium language, was there, or did I miss?
Yes, that's what Karen is here. Yeah.
I thought it was just the language for the harbor amendments.
I don't think the moratorium language is in there.
It was.
Oh, it is?
No, it's in the possible warrant language.
Yes.
Bill and I went around the ground.
Possible warrant language, what? I thought we should not, a moratorium.
Yes. You want me to explain?
Can you take a?
Hey, your microphone's right there. You don't have to move it.
We're gonna take a 5-minute recess before we move on.
Maybe I just needed to review the packet more.
Reconvene.
This is the most interesting part of the board and everybody's leaving.
Audrey, Bill's available on Zoom too.
Yeah, discussion really goes down. Good job, Tom. Yeah, we're really good at this.
Oh, yeah.
You really are, like,
I'm sweating.
there's.
But you did great.
It's because it's warm in here. That's all.
It's true.
Let's turn the fan back on.
What a hard job, and,
You're doing it with grace and style.
you really are, like,
Yes.
I mean.
I'm glad it's perceived that way.
That's right. It doesn't matter what it looks like on the inside. I think they have
Good thing, just, I was like, not ready for that,
that the popcorn is gonna
the
go on.
pop and public landing, it's like, oh,
We're still
just like,
home,
so,
so
yeah, well, I say it. Well, you know, this is the. I mean, this is what's gonna increase our viewership,
Yeah, I know.
the candid.
And it dropped.
You thought they were all here, get here, yours. Thought they were.
So Jeremy, just, so there's stuff about the moratorium in the.
Yeah, the warrant, it's.
Oh, right. Oh, wait, never mind. I was hoping that we didn't have to. Talk. Don't have it. But if I could bring
Bill,
a
are
wet
you
towel.
talking? Or trying to talk?
Me?
No, I was talking to Bill. Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry, we were muted because we're taking a 5-minute break.
I'm not muted, actually. Holly tells me.
Everybody but Allison is muted.
Oh, because Stephanie's on.
Ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Reconvening the meeting at 10 PM.
All right,
For how long are we gonna go? Do we just do the pier?
you got 5 minutes to me right now, that's it. How's that?
Maybe
All right.
2.5.
2.5. So this is an update on piers, on what you asked me to do, staff to do at the last meeting, which there was a motion to move forward the harbor committee's recommendations to voters in November. But at the same time, you said you wanted to keep the moratorium alive on new residential piers. So it's kind of a, a challenging task. And so what I did, Bill Kelly's drafted, and he's online here with us. I did a memo, hopefully you read it, and drafted, remember I did the chapter 290 zoning ordinance amendments, and those are gonna come to you, on August 22nd as well. Those are gonna stay as is. Now, remember, we were trying to do, they should be consistent, right? The two laws should match up. But when laws don't match up, the most strict applies. Okay, so chapter 290 is going to stay as it is now, as the harbor committee and the planning board heard the hearings. The chapter 108 ordinance amendments, which are the harbor and waterways ordinances, will address land attached floats, which is something that I think everyone has wanted to address. We've defined them, we've created a review process, they go through the process much like a pier would. It goes to the harbor committee, goes to the select board, goes to the planning board. And then we tweak the harbor committee's recommendations and the planning board's, what they've reviewed. Not a lot, but we changed it, and this is where we went from the height of 6 feet, the max height now above mean high water, to 8 feet. Now, what these ordinance amendments would do would be, it says that no wharfs, in the event of storm damage, significant repair or replacement of existing piers. So these are existing piers, this would be not new piers or new other structures, these are existing ones. They have to be brought up to 8 feet if practicable, because in some cases, due to slopes and the elevation changes, it might not be practicable to get to full 8 feet. So we've done that, and we've defined what significant repair is, and that means a cost of repair that exceeds 50% of fair market value of the structure. We tweaked that in the outer harbor and the coastal harbor, it says the same language about in the event of storm damage, significant repair or replacement of existing piers. They have to be raised, and then you have to also structurally altered, so in the future, they're going to be raised even higher. And consolidated piers section changes that from 6 feet to 8 feet again, and it also is the same verbiage, which is the storm damage, significant repairs or to existing or replacement of existing consolidated piers. Doesn't allow new ones. And then again, we added a provision for to permit land attached floats and laid out the process, and then the procedures for the planning board, harbor committee, and select board approval that you had issues with, and there's been kind of it was wonky, Allison. I will say, you read it in one way, and I say, yeah, it makes sense what you're saying, but then when it talks about who issues a permit, it doesn't make sense. So it's a really, really wonky situation. So we changed it, and in what you have in front of you, the red line is what is being deleted, and the new is blue. It does specifically say that it goes to the harbor committee, the select board, and then the planning board, and it lays out the process that it must be approved by both the harbor, the select board, and the planning board. But we had to create a process that enables an appeal, because every decision that a municipality makes has has to have an appeal process.
That all makes sense. So
Our process didn't have an appeal process for the planning for the select board before, so it was really kind of long. So now you go through, you have to go through harbor committee, select board, say select board denies it. It still goes to the planning board. The planning board could approve it or deny it, but then the applicant will have the right to appeal the select board's decision because it specifically says you need both approvals before it can be permitted. The old ordinance said that they would permit the permits issued by the select board. Very strange. Select boards don't issue permits. So we tweak that to say the code officer issues that permit once all the approvals are in place.
all right, is this for new piers?
What's that?
Was it-
Piers that were
No,
not,
this would be for even a replacement, so replacement of existing, that if someone's coming in and they want to replace the
Okay.
existing, they still need to
Sorry.
go through the process. Okay, so, and. The warrant language, the warrant article is how we're looking at this, is gonna say something along the lines of, and this is a draft, because we're having a hearing on the 22nd on these changes. Shall the voters amend the harbor ordinance to require that existing piers, if damaged, require significant repair or replacement, shall be raised to a height of 8 feet above sea level, if practicable, and structurally reinforced and designated and designed to mitigate risk of sea level rise, provided, however, the moratorium ordinance enacted on a certain specific date prohibiting the construction of new residential piers and other structures, with the exception of land attached floats in the outer and coastal harbor, shall remain in full force and effect unless specifically displaced by the amendments proposed by this article. And that would keep the residential prohibition on piers and other structures in place, but allow these changes to allow you to review land attached floats and allow people to replace them, which they're allowed to do already, because if you eventually ban piers, people have the right, and they have existing ones, they have the right to replace them. Does that make sense?
But sea level doesn't make sense, right?
Go ahead.
Sea level. Didn't the harbor committee, didn't we take like a?
Yeah, that they be structurally
But
designed
it's not 8 feet above sea level, right?
above mean high water.
Mean high, you said sea level.
Oh, I'm sorry, mean high. water.
So let's make sure it's.
It
mean
It says
high
mean
water.
high water.
Says me hockey.
does it say how we're gonna define that? Because it's gonna change soon when they redo that.
Yeah, mean high waters, I understand mean high waters defined by the state of Maine annually.
No, they do it like every 20 years.
Okay. So that's.
We're on the old one right now, which is why it makes even more sense. It's about to change. So
Yeah, and we did, Bill and I had that conversation and I chatted.
I think our ordinance says what it is. It's like,
It does define mean high water.
but it's about to change for everything. So, and my, just a quick
Go ahead.
thing is that when in this re-permitting or the process that you would go through to rebuild up here, would it be possible to add in the, so we've got the 5 criteria or whatever it is that get reviewed. Would it be possible to add language about, whenever practicable, making modifications in a way that allows for people to pass underneath? So like there, for instance, there are 2 piers right now on either side of Harbor Road, at the Harbor Road public access point. If you look to the right, this one that's been there, the way that the stairs connect to it allows, like, there's space between the seawall and the stairs. You can kind of get through there, even though you can't get underneath the pier itself. Whereas this new one that was just built takes the flat part of the pier all the way, and it makes a really meaningful difference for people. Yeah, so if that could just be part of the review
Sure, I think we
criteria.
can do that.
I think a lot of people would be willing to do that when they design them, but they just don't think about it.
If practicable, to allow. Yes.
However you would want to
access.
word that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And it looks like it's gonna treat land attached floats like piers and wharves in the Sherman's Cove area.
correct.
That's good, because
So my question that I would have is the amendments that are here, kind of feels like they meet the moratorium specifications.
Well, they
So-
need some of them, and that's why the warrant article, the way Bill and I drafted this, unless specifically displaced by the amendments proposed by this article. And that's where land and cash floats, and we'll detail it a little more in like a likely language that will go along with the warrant article, or at least a memo of some sort. But we addressed, and what I tried to do in the memo was explain that there were certain things that identified the issues in the moratorium that the Harbor Committee recommendations addressed. And that's why I went on in the memo again to say that although the Harbor Committee felt like the density issue of new piers wasn't an issue, the planning board, on the other hand, I thought it was an issue and that it should be further restricted, and that's why we're going to continue
Examining.
Right, but the
examining the issue.
moratorium did it, I mean, I just want to make sure that, because we were told last time that we didn't give a narrow scope enough to
Well,
be concise for the last year and a half, so now we're going to extend it again.
Yeah.
And by the sounds of it, we're probably gonna have to extend it again. So the review process is never timely.
yeah,
So I'm just trying to look forward.
yeah,
So we've hit that. I'm still concerned. I understand that we added that language, but I'm still a little concerned that we didn't already meet the moratorium criteria and that
well, you identified the last hearing, right, you had a public hearing to extend it, and you determined that it still was valid, the concerns were still valid,
To
and
put it-
that we're making considerable progress
Right.
still.
to put it on the.
And then when you got to it, and I think Chris made the motion to move the vote, the Harbor Committee recommendations to voters. So trying to take that with the public, the extension of the moratorium together.
Yeah.
We did the best we can to come up with a warrant article to address that issue, and maybe we can be a little more clear that certain items in the moratorium were addressed more clearly, more sufficiently in the Harbor Committee recommendations and what's proposed here. But I think overall, Bill and I feel that this protects us. That's one of the reasons why I included and other structures with the exception of land attached floats. We didn't talk about other structures, and the Harbor Committee hasn't talked about other structures, and the planning board hasn't talked about other structures, but that was in the moratorium. But I wanted to, since we addressed land attached floats, and I think everyone was on board with addressing those. I didn't want to just say, if you look at it, while also continuing the moratorium as it relates to new residential piers and other structures except for land attached floats. I wanted to kind of keep that alive, and that's kind of supporting the continuation of the moratorium.
Like wharfs.
Like
I mean,
wharfs,
we
for
haven't even
instance, or
contemplated,
breakwaters.
like
Yeah,
if somebody wants to build their own wharf, we're like, oh,
right,
you can, that's filling in the intertidal zone.
correct,
That's even more extreme up here in some ways.
right. And that's why I left that in here. in the
Yeah,
moratorium.
that makes sense.
And not just said piers.
But
So
we're
we
ready.
can be more clear, and Bill and I, we spent
I
it
know.
doesn't seem like a lot, it should take a lot.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that it feels like we're stretching to keep the moratorium going. And I also kind of feel like we have so many safeguards in place that, I mean, don't shoot me. Would it be okay for the moratorium not to be continued after the vote and to start fresh again? So that it doesn't feel like we're stretching.
Well, I think what you'll get likely would be you already had the Harbor Committee say that I think four piers is good, or, there's only gonna be 4 or 5 or whatever the number, there's some kind of conflict there on the southeast side, right? I think, and then you have the planning board said, well, okay, we actually think we should restrict them all now, or prohibit further ones in the outer and the coastal. So you've got a board that's already engaged in that process and identified it as an issue of the moratorium. That's a reason why the moratorium could continue.
We got to consensus last time, I thought.
I'd also say, so it really, and this is kind of what we've been waiting for and what's held us up. If there's a policy consensus amongst the select board that you think that additional private piers are an issue that you want to sort of mitigate or address in some way. Like Jeremy said, we can't do that between now and November, but we can do it between now and June.
Right.
And make no mistake about it, this is gonna keep happening. Jeremy's got, you know, inquiries about other properties in the coastal harbor where people want to build private piers. So, I mean, from that perspective, if it's something that you want to address, I mean, there, you know, if you don't continue the moratorium, it is gonna happen between the time that, yeah, between the time that the moratorium ends and whenever it's addressed in June.
It will.
Immediately, absolutely.
It will.
It will.
I am interested in hearing what Bill Kelly has to say. Since he's been on.
Hello, folks. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think, Stephanie, if your question is about whether or not the town can do two things, effectively pass the recommendations from the Harbor Committee as an amendment, which is what's before you, and at the same time have the moratorium continue regarding new piers. And we discussed that last time. And my initial thought was that it was going to be problematic to adopt the Harbor Committee recommendations without it appearing like the moratorium had been displaced. And what I had mentioned at that time was, sort of thinking out loud, was we should probably have a second warrant article which adopts a new moratorium or proposes a new moratorium that makes clear what's being restricted or prohibited until that further ordinance work was done. So that was my contribution last time when we talked about these concepts, because this was you guys came up with sort of a hybrid model that Jeremy and I have been working on. And since then, in talking it through and thinking about it a little bit more, I think the warrant article is drafted really covers the problem or solves the problem because of that language about unless it's specifically displaced, the moratorium continues. So by definition, the only thing that is being changed are the very specific changes in the harbor ordinance, and every other aspect of the moratorium will continue. So I think this is a more refined approach than what I was thinking, which was a little too clumsy to have two warrant articles. And hopefully that addresses your question, but that's how the thought process evolved as Jeremy and I sort of went through this and talked about it.
I read a book sometime about this whole process. I'm sure it'll be really
It'd be
interesting.
called like piers or something.
Right, and making the laws match and stuff.
I think we're on the right track here. I think that we're making progress. And we're still, working towards a decision about what we want to do for future piers. I don't see a conflict. I think we should move this forward to the voters in November to address the land attached floats and the change in height. And we should continue to work on piers as a board with an intention to get something decided by June.
And I will add, I'll craft something to, I think, Allison's concern about the facilitating a practicable access along the shore for the public.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's easy. Yeah. And I will say, the Harbor Committee, I spoke with Josh yesterday. Josh Moore, the chair of the Harbor Committee, he called me because he saw this on the agenda. And the Harbor Committee met this morning, and I guess he shared it with them, and none of them really had any concerns, if I understand. So if you were there.
Yes, nobody had any concerns.
Yeah.
Not gonna raise this.
I mean, it's a little awkward to the Harbor Committee did their things, and then I tweaked what they did and never took it back to them, They don't have to approve it. It's not a big deal, but they did talk about it.
We talked about it
They
this
all
morning.
reviewed it, so. I think it was good at least to get that to them. I told the planning board what the process at the meeting the other day. I told them that where this is going. So they're at least understand that there'll be something on the agenda and they're going to continue to look at piers to further restrict them or regulate them more.
It's only more than 2.5 minutes, but.
So I make,
10 minutes,
I now know a lot.
10 minutes,
I make a motion that we approve.
there's no action.
Oh, no action, right.
Adjourn.
Adjourn.
No action needed. I just, it's helpful, it is helpful to do this before you get the actual ordinance language in front of you at a hearing, because, you know, trying to, on the fly, come up with something like you just asked for is hard to do the night of the hearing.
Right, so I actually did, I was like, why is this on the agenda again?
That's
And I
why.
now actually
We
see
asked-
This
the
is why,
value and
this is
and
why.
then we actually talked about it when there's so many changes, so great job, everyone, thanks for facilitating that.
Chris,
I
thanks for
move that
giving
we
me the
adjourn.
challenge.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
All right. Thanks, guys.
5-0. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you all.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yeah.